I didn't
in a
run.
way that was
I
really
didn't
over
run.
the top.
I didn't run.
Okay.
I didn't run. I
Okay.
didn't run.
That's
I didn't. Him giving an opportunity to the likes of Nick Fuentes and Sneeko.
What do we think Professor Sunday can do better?
We're
with
not on the same side. It's also claimed that a psychometrist is the title of a master's degree.
This is bullshit, Sunday. Shut the f up.
Are you a moderator or are you a debater? What are you?
Like,
This is my show. I'll do whatever the f I want, okay? Right? Like,
Really? So there is no moderation, to be clear. This is a farce.
Uh-oh. He's about to leave. Careful how you answer.
I want to give everyone. God damn it!
Professor, no!
What? Okay, so
Do you not agree with that statement? I'm so curious on that because a lot of people get really triggered on the left when I say that. But it's so true, isn't it? Chill, damn.
Maybe give some
We don't have
advice.
to be so f***ing mean in here. You guys are so
I am
mean.
completely fine with that.
I
Okay,
hope
but
Netanyahu himself kills you in a video game.
Destiny,
Okay.
Destiny. I don't mean to say, oh, Destiny's a liberal, so he can't, like, be part of progressive change. Just to quickly answer your question, I separate, like, leftists from progressives. Maybe that's just my ignorant take, because I consider myself a progressive, but I wouldn't say I'm a socialist. But as Brianna said, maybe that's a bit silly to, like, talk about the minutia of
Katie, can I
these
ask?
definitions.
Can I ask, just for my own edification, what to you is the difference between a progressive and a liberal? And also, in addition, what value is there in separating out, in kind of like micro-otherizing the liberals, in like making this distinction? What value?
Can I answer you quickly after I respond to what Brianna said?
Please, go ahead.
Okay, so, again, I'm not making this separate. At the end of the day, liberals have a lot more political power if progressives have any. And at the end of the day, liberals and progressives do have to work together if they want to have any change to their direction. So absolutely, when liberal policies are being passed, that supports progressive causes. A lot of the times, not all the times. So we definitely work together, and I don't believe in like saying, oh, you're a liberal, so you don't help us or something like that. And I'm not necessarily interested in having Destiny become a socialist. Like, I don't give a fuck about that.
I don't see the point of wheedling through like all of these distinctions. Like, it's really just about like, what are you trying to do?
Well, I feel like it is important though, because that's like that is progressivism, is endlessly weeding through who actually counts as a progressive or not, right? Isn't that like the definition of the fucking...
So to be clear then, when you said you were a progressive earlier, you were being facetious.
No, I consider myself a progressive because I hold very progressive social views. I think most people in the
You
United
just said
States...
the essence of it was wheedling about who's acceptable,
because
who's excluded, etc.
Okay, nice trick. I'm not falling for it, okay? I think that there's a huge problem in the progressive movement of trying to figure out, like, who is a progressive? Like, can you be a capitalist and a progressive? Is there any ethical consumption under capitalism? Can we play the Harry Potter Hogwarts game, or does that make us evil and not progressive?
Wait. But it's a bit disingenuous, because you asked the question of, like, what distinguishes, like, a progressive from a liberal, and then I answer you, and then it's about progressive wading through the things? You asked the question.
Hold on.
I didn't say you're this or
Wait,
that.
I'm not blaming you, but I asked you if I was just curious if you considered liberals progressives, and then Kid Notkin said, well, does it really matter? And I agree with that. I don't think it matters that much, but to a lot of people, it really matters if you're a socialist. And I think that's part of the problem. That's like my thesis.
Okay.
I guess. Yeah.
So
I agree with that.
If we agreed that all this panel doesn't care, can we move on from that point? Because some people.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
I think.
Can I
with
go
all
ahead?
due respect, Kid, very quickly, I think I do care, insofar as if we're going to be castigating progressives as a category, but we're going to be leaving liberals untouched by this, we need to be particular about why progressives in particular, as opposed to liberals, have a responsibility in particular.
No one's getting out of this, Sunday. No one's getting out of this. Liberals,
so.
Progressives, rightoids, anyone could be castigated on this panel. It's okay.
Hell
no one's
yes.
free of those lands.
Castigate away.
Oh, I think you misunderstand what I'm saying. If we're going to target progressives as a group that is specifically responsible or not responsible for some kind of social achievement, we need to be clear about who we're talking about.
True.
Okay, so like, I think it's fair enough to point out the fact that like, for whatever fundamental reasons you want to say that this exists, with the increasing polarization of people politically in the United States, how people engage online, the insular spaces that people create, there are definitely characteristics that play out because of these things. One of those things is treating people as political monoliths, if you say one particular point, it's very easy for a progressive to point at that and then say, oh, you're saying this, therefore you must believe this, this, or this, because you are associated to this other insular group on the internet. I think that's probably fair to point out when we're talking about how progressives react in this space.
But I think it's when we're talking about this, I think it's fine to say that liberals and progressives, especially juxtaposed against like conservatives or Republicans, like we're going the same direction. But I don't think it's unreasonable. Like, I think most people understand there are differences in terms of like ideologies, or maybe a lot of leftists would claim that there are different like lenses of analysis through which you see the world and like offer solutions. So I'm not saying that it matters to for the sake of like separating each other. We can be allies, but a lot of the times progressives would have an issue with liberals because liberals would not be willing to take extra steps that progressive thinks are necessary. Whether that's good or bad, we can discuss. But
just real quick, Katie, if I may ask then, right, on that note, right, is it worth our time, given all the opposition we face from the outside, if the liberals are with the progressives in most cases, is it worth our time to spend our capital and energy and efforts in drawing these distinctions as well as fighting the progressives? And why is that the case?
Okay, so I'll ask you a question, and then depending on your answer, that will change my answer.
Maybe.
Do you consider the Democratic Party like liberals?
Yeah, for the most part.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't
Do you
agree
think
with
the
that,
Democratic
no.
Party supports progressive interests?
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sure, sometimes, but you said most of the time, and we also said that again, just because you pass a liberal policy doesn't mean that it comes from a progressive
Katie,
viewpoint,
you talk
right?
so much. I gotta give you some pushback here. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I say you're chasing the wrong question. This shit doesn't matter. If it does not matter. If you believe that progressives need more power, and I agree with you, what you need to start doing, in my view, is to stop wasting time on theoretical questions like this. This is what you need to do. You need to go start a fundraising base. You need to start a volunteer base. You need to bring on someone that's an expert and help you comply with FEC regulation, which is a massive part of this. You need to find a lawyer that can help you do things. I'm talking the bread and butter business of garnering political power. The problem is, and I say this respectfully, but we have two generations now that, in my view, have been brainwashed by being like growing up on social media. And it's trained everyone to think that politics is this performance game where you post what your dream world is going to be, and then magically that gets translated over into real world political power. That is an illusion. That is a lie. And if you're serious about beating the liberals, the reason they're winning is because they're serious in doing things that make sense to beat the Republicans. That's why they have more power in the Democratic Party. If you want to be serious about building the data infrastructure and the volunteer infrastructure that we need, I would love to do that alongside of you. But at the very beginning of this, when I said you're interested in answering the wrong question, this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about.
So Sunday, I'll respond and I'll let you talk. Okay.
Will you decide who gets to talk? But go
sorry,
ahead.
Wick, you
and
can
then Sunday
decide.
right after.
Jeez.
So, Brianna.
Yes.
I already said earlier, I'm fine with ditching this question if we're all on board, and then President Sunday said, no, it's a distinction. So I'm just trying to engage with what the panel is saying. I do not care. This doesn't matter to me. But there was something that you said that I think is important to address. I'm sure there are many reasons why liberalism is more popular than progressivism, but I also think they're winning because it's easier to win when you're more part of the status quo than something that challenges the status quo. And like, we can say that's not the main reason or whatever. I'm not going to disagree with that if you want me to, but I just wanted to say that. So I'm fine moving on. I don't need to die on this hill because I don't even care about this distinction. I already said we can work with liberals.
Okay, I hear you.
I'm just trying to engage with the panel.
I heard you.
I'm satisfied with the response. We can move on.
Great.
Okay, I think it feels a little bit weird to completely separate these cultural issues from the way that politics is done systematically. That seems a little strange to me, especially when we see on the right that like this is like a fundamental building block for like getting their base energized and getting people on the same page to vote for policy that they all agree with, right? Like it seems kind of strange that we would see that happening on the right and then discount that completely from the left. Seems weird.
Who are you saying this to?
Brianna.
Okay.
I'm not trying. I literally don't understand the point you just made. Could you say it again in different words?
Me too.
Yeah.
I understood the point.
Okay. Well, please, you take it.
Yeah. Okay. You're defining this process of like, listen, what we need to do is we need to have like these fundamental actions. We need to go out there.
Yes.
We need to raise money. We need to pass these policies,
Yes.
et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
And for me, it seems a little bit silly to completely detach that from the way that like most Americans are communicating with each other politically and how people believe or how people think about values and ideas within society.
I'm suggesting they're completely separated. I'm saying there's a
I think
primary...
actually, if I may, before you
Sure.
before you bite that bullet too hard, I think you were actually sort of directly implying that they were connected. You were just highlighting electoral politics as the primary arena for the short term.
That's exactly right.
It sounded like you were mystifying it a little bit.
I don't.
Seems like people
I'm
take
not
it too
mystifying
seriously.
it. You're not interpreting that. Think about it. You're probably too young to have played a game called TIE Fighter. But if you do go play it, and you should, think of it as secondary mission objectives and primary mission objectives, right? The secondary mission objectives help feed in. The online discourse has a non-trivial amount of, it brings people into the movement, it builds them up, though all this progressive bullshit and infighting pushes them away. Let's be straight about that. But our messaging and cohesion has a point. I'm just saying, if you're not then taking the next step to real world political power, you're ultimately just masturbating.
Right. No, I think that's the point, is that is the next step, right?
And then may I ask,
it has a first step to it.
But Brianna, you say that, and forgive me for this, but we had a panel not too long ago on the Hogwarts Legacy.
Yeah.
Right. Boycott, right?
Sure.
Like, talking about driving people away, talking about making things more difficult for the on-the-ground activists. How is that, which you advocated for, substantively different than what you're saying now?
My view on Hogwarts, if you go back to that panel, is very straightforward. I said this is a bad fight. It's a bad framing for us to have to fight on, but it's the battle that J.K. Rowling started, not the trans community. And I think there's value in trans people standing together and pushing back and asking for a boycott. I don't support the ways that this boycott has expressed itself online. I think it's the toxic politics I'm talking about here. But as far as a mission objective, I actually think the trans community was relatively united in saying, we would like you to stand with this community. I think that's a worthwhile mission objective. So
I think, can I enter something here? Because the Hogwarts Legacy illustrates it as well, too. I think that and I'm not saying progressives are necessarily unique in this. Maybe this is just of all politics. Phrasing everything as like the end of the world or an existential crisis or genocide for a group of people on every single problem, I think starts to get really exhausting at some point, to where it's like I think that an okay call for like, we should boycott this because we don't support J.K. Rowling and we want to send a message or whatever, like I think that's fine. But when every single issue turns into like, if you don't boycott this, you are transphobic and trans people kill themselves and you are genocidal by, you know, casting a spell in the Harry Potter game, I feel like that's part of the problem that gets everything so high-strung and then makes people like roll their eyes so much at every progressive demand. And I think that there's like Katie did it a little bit here too. When we say things like, what's the biggest threat to progressives, and it's like fascism, and it's like, is it really? When everything, like the stakes are so high and it's always about like Nazis and fascists and everything, it feels a little dramatic sometimes, and it feels hard to get like normal people on board with things.
I would respond to that. Brianna, I just have a question before that. So are you saying that the boycott was like a good or effective method of...
Katie, just real quick, can you address him first, and then we can get back to Brianna Wu? But he just like literally talked to you, so can you respond to him real quick?
Well, I told you I'll be ignoring him. Yeah, so when I said that, I just meant very specifically that when fascism takes power, progressives are usually at actual threat. I'm not saying that there's currently like a genocide of progressives. I just mean in terms of factually, historically, progressives are under threat when fascism takes power. That's why I didn't make a big deal about it, because it's not super relevant for now. but I was being pedantic with the question. The question was threat, not what stops progressives from having political power, right? Can I ask the question now? No?
You can ask it. I kind of feel like you're dominating this discussion.
Yeah.
I apologize. I'll shut up.
No, you don't have to shut up. I just want, like, this is a problem, right? The reason I asked this question, the reason I put this together is because it's an actual problem that I see happening. I see people, much to Brianna Wu's statement, right? They this performative slacktivism, right? That people go out and they post online that they stand with Black Lives Matter, or they stand with trans rights and things like that, and then they do nothing else. It's empty calories. They feel full. They feel like that they've done something. They feel like that they've performed and been an ally, but nothing gets done. Nothing gets done, and it's this slowly creeping legislation that comes up on us. You see all the anti-trans legislation. If the trans community had put as much effort online as to making waves about that as they had to Hogwarts Legacy, what could have been done, right? I don't know, right? But maybe nothing. Maybe it wouldn't have made a difference. But I just see us. I
feel like,
the wind. Go ahead.
With all due respect, Wick, I feel
Please.
like attributing responsibility to a group, even one as specific as trans people we were talking about progressive earlier, it's just a non-starter. What are you gonna tell them? Hey, you should enforce discipline in your organization. It's not an organization; it's a demographic. These are not groups that are capable of a concerted policy or a plan.
That probably needs to change then if they want to get things done. Correct?
Trans union, yes.
Unironically.
You're not.
Well, wait, hold on. You can absolutely direct like movements. Right? BLM is a largely disconnected group of people, right? I know that conservatives like to point to the BLM organization, but for the most part, it's pretty disconnected. But there was a lot of unity in those riots, right? I think that you can push and massage and
you say a unity in those riots, but you describe yourself as a progressive, but are also describing BLM protests as riots. Good luck. I mean, you have a better shot of organizing them than any of us.
Hold on, wait. I'm just so
Wait.
curious. Wait. Do you think that like snidely finding an exception to everything I'm saying is like disproving a single thing I'm saying? Was it not true that there was a
That's not an
massive
exception.
unification?
That's a fundamental contradiction
there was a
between
massive,
what you're saying and your actions.
There was a massive unification of BLM protests / riots or whatever throughout that entirety of the post-George Floyd stuff without any leaders being required. So it seems like we can speak to some sort of cultural trend or phenomenon, and it seems
you can cause people to go out in the streets with a hashtag. What does that have to do with what we're talking about?
Because we're saying use a different hashtag.
Instead of defund the police, right, which hurt a lot of.
Hang on, one sec.
Sure, you had to take a response to that.
Different hashtag. How are you going to get people to only use a different hashtag? How are you going to excise the people who are ACAB from the people who are just reform the police? How do you do that? And who's you in this equation?
Well, me is a large content creator with hundreds of thousands to millions of people to listen. I've got tons of authority.
All the other disparate
I literally set the discourse for half the politics fucking streams on this platform for 2 weeks with a tweet. And all of you guys have massive influence too, because there's stuff that you guys say that can blow up in your little tweet. I'm sorry, that's not really. Hold on, wait. Let me answer a question before you keep railroading me. Stop railroading. Okay, all of us in this room have the power to set discourse. Brianna probably has more influence than me in a lot of areas in terms of like discourse that can get set. All of you guys can be part of conversations that can set discourse for weeks on end. And when you set this discourse, it influences people's minds and it moves them in a certain direction. If I don't know why you're even here, or I don't know why you exist online at all, if you're unironically going to say like, well, what power do any of us have to change about any of the things that any of us think about at all? Like, we all have a little bit of power.
You're not following me. You're not following me. The issue is not that you can't influence people. The issue is that you can't enforce discipline when you have disparate voices saying contrary things.
You absolutely can enforce discipline. We do it socially all the time. What do you mean how? We cancel people?
If you mean no,
I can't answer. What is it? What is what? Do I need to invent the universe to make an apple pie for you?
If you mean that a large number of people doing one thing in concert already can pressure people into not engaging in whatever action or activities or rhetoric that they are pressuring them out, sure. But how do you get that rolling in the first place? How do you suddenly make one policy more effective than another one? If your counter is just like, hey, well, we can just talk about it and influence each other. Well, we're doing that right now. That doesn't determine which of us actually prevail. That doesn't determine whether or not discipline is enforced in one direction or the other. That's entirely separate.
Yeah, so what you do is you have a position that you want, and then you advocate for that. You try to get your friends on board with that. You try to get other people online on board with that. So hopefully, instead of like defund the police, maybe an example is people try to push 8 can't wait. I don't know if that would have been effective versus ACAB or defund the police, but there are messages that we all push for, that we all get online and we advocate for, and that's what we're talking about here. What are the messages that we should advocate for? You seem to be making an argument that you can't advocate for messaging. I don't understand what that means.
No, I'm saying that the fact that we can advocate for messaging is not sufficient to identify progressives as a coherent group that can be blameworthy for the circumstances in which progressives as a whole find themselves, because it's not a political party or an organization.
No, but it is a cultural movement. Sorry.
Does this mean that you can't have like value shifts within these disparate groups? Like...
No, not at all. But we need to be realistic about the kinds of influences that individuals and subgroups can have within it.
So if you advocate for value shifts within these disparate groups, is that just doing the same thing that you're talking about, of just like trying to hold these groups accountable that are already disparate? You can't actually reach them in that way.
Well, no, that's trying to influence the most general trends within that group at that level of resolution. Holding them accountable in the context of this discourse, where we are holding progressives as a category blameworthy for something, doesn't make any sense.
So I agree with everything you just said. Destiny, if I could just jump back for a minute, because I studied a lot for this. The subject at hand is Hogwarts, and as I understand the arguments everyone has said here, the question is, why couldn't you like organize the trans community to have a boycott in a more directed way? Sunday, as I understand it, is saying it's very difficult to enforce that. Something I think that's evidence for Sunday's point of view is the debate that you've had on your own channel. You had a video this week. I thought it was excellent. I watched it twice, even though it was 2 hours long, basically talking about trans issues with your channel. And, you know, it seems to me you have a real bifurcation in your own community of people that do have questions about issues like self-ID and xenopronouns and, you know, some of these other things is very much at odds with some of the more esoteric younger members of the trans community. I mean, so I think your own community is really strong example of what Sunday is talking about, where trans people are not a monolith, and there are various schools of thought that make it really hard to bring it together and enforce any kind of message discipline.
Just let me understand. Are we trying to say right now that there's just no possible way to culturally enforce a particular thing without like a top-down hierarchical structure?
No, I'm certainly not saying that. I think what I would say is for trans people particularly, in my view, just because mathematically there are fewer trans people than there are, say, you know, black people in my home state of Mississippi managed to garner a lot of political power because, you know, they're 40% of the population and tended to live in towns next to each other, right? They would take over local politics and keep each other safe. It's one of the ways they survived in the post-Reconstruction South, right? I think that's a lot harder for trans people because it's so disparate, right? So I think you end up having, I think this is a community where it's extremely difficult to have any kind of message discipline because just the ages are so different and the perspectives are so different, and frankly, a lot of younger people are in the middle of trauma.
Sure. So depending on how big your group is, there can be challenges, but yeah. I'm not going to take the position that it's impossible to move any person or at least like parts of the people from one way to another, right? I have my audience. I'm sure you have your audience on Twitter and any other platform you're on. Well, all of us here have some type of voice because we talk to each other and everything. If all of that is to be the case, then there are we can advocate for our people to want certain things, and we can use social pressure to punish people that don't. Maybe it's the case that in my community, I believe that minors, at the very least from age 12 and up, should have access to some sort of gender affirming care, whether that's therapy, hormones, or whatever. I believe that. So I encourage my people to believe that. If they see people online that argue against it, they'll argue against them. That just by me putting out that message into my community, I slowly move the waves in that direction. And that's I guess that's all I thought this conversation was. What do we kind of advocate for our people to do? Because we do have some impact, even if there's not like a top-down leadership to progressivism. There are going to be larger figures in these movements that could move their people in certain directions, and then those are the kind of the waves that we all try to push forth into society to establish whatever idea we want.
I think that's a strong point. I entirely agree with you, and I think I've seen DGG shut down transphobia on Reddit. Certainly, I think that you play a role. I think, and I say this with respect, I'm not trying to start a public fight with you, but I think when I think about your channel at the best and what you do when you are at your best, I do think it's bringing people together on a common message. I think Georgia is a really good example of that. I think one of the reasons I decided to stop feuding with you publicly, even though you've gone after me, in some pretty personal ways, is I saw what you were doing on Fresh and Fit. And I'm like, you know what? There's no one else. Like, he's going to get invited to this space. My trans friends aren't. This has value. I think I should focus on more important fights. I think at your best, you're very effective at that. I think my respectful critique would be sometimes, when I see your worst respectfully, is you tend to want to really adjudicate and magnify these differences and really beat up people you don't agree with. It's very entertaining. I mean, I enjoy that show, but I don't think it's fundamentally an exercise about coalition building. And I think I realize a Destiny show that was focused on that would not get as high ratings, but I think it would be something more involved in building political power.
Yeah, it might be. And if you feel that way, like I think you should like propagate that message as much as you can, because that's kind of the goal of what we're all trying to do, right? Is to get more people to agree with the things we believe in. Yeah.
I guess this kind of brings us to a point, right? Like, Brianna, you mentioned like feuding and fighting a little bit publicly with Destiny and things like that. I'll get to you, Katie. Give me a second. Let me get this out. Don't worry. Given your stances of earlier, right, and given the question in the panel, should we be fighting with each other at all, right? Should we be even engaging in these kind of petty bullshit back and forth? Should we kind of make it a kind of a culturally unacceptable amongst the online left to engage in this pettiness? And then how do we do that? Like, what's the steps forward here?
We have to make it impossible to do that kind of thing, because this is such a huge problem with it, is that so many people treat it as if that's all it is. And that is all it is to a lot of these people, is because they are rewarded for, they get social reward for just this dick measuring contest to try and find the most progressive views that they can push, even if they aren't actually helpful to marginalized people. That's why I brought up things like the trans sports thing and the Hogwarts legacy debate right at the beginning, because these are issues that get pushed constantly online by progressives that don't actually matter at all. They do not benefit trans people, but they are constantly centered, and we have to stop doing that, because it's such a waste of time for everyone.
Well, what was the result of pushing back on trans people who were saying we should boycott Hogwarts Legacy?
The result of that is that we look like an absolute laughingstock, and conservatives have had a new talking point
Indeed,
for the last 2 weeks.
So in this particular instance, the only
wait, she misunderstood the question there.
Who misunderstood the question?
I think she thought you asked what was the point of the boycotting of
No.
Hogwarts.
I asked what was the consequence of it, not what was the point.
Well, but you asked what was the consequence of people policing the boycott, I think, and she answered what was the consequence of the boycott. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
What was the consequence of policing the boycott, please?
The consequence of policing the boycott. What do you mean by that? Sorry.
Doing precisely what you're advocating.
He's asking, like, what was the point of, like, bullying all the trans people that were trying to do the boycott? What was the point of that? Did that accomplish anything?
The point of that was to prevent the exact kind of outcome that actually happened. Like, conservatives now have this thing to laugh at us about, where we look like idiots because we've been pushing on this thing that just doesn't matter.
Well,
which has massively failed as well, I would add.
Yeah, it seems to me that while the calls for a boycott were going on, the rhetoric that Rowling was engaged with, at the very least, was being highlighted in the popular discourse.
Yep.
The consequence of piling on,
and that could have been brought up without this pointless boycott.
Of course, but the upshot of people within the community and sort of adjacent or nominally allies to the community piling on that was just to exacerbate the extent to which the people who were critical of Rowling were made to look like fools before conservatives and centrists, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not saying that therefore the call for a boycott was a good idea, but what you're describing isn't necessarily a positive in that direction. It may be the case that you're only advantaging the people who want that group entirely gone.
I think we have to be careful because that line of argumentation can literally be like, I think some amount of infighting is healthy. Like you have to be able to disagree with people in your movement. We can't use the argument that like, well, what if we infight, but like we don't win our infighting, and now we've just given the opponents like ammunition for it. That's an argument against ever like disagreeing with your side politically at all. I don't think that's good. I think we should be able to disagree with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it also
I just think we're attaching way too much.
People on that same side and understanding that there's like multiple different angles that could have been approached instead of just seeing it as this internal. Like,
I just think we're attaching way too much agency, and way too much, I guess, efficacy to sort of targeted interventions of the sort that we seem to be thinking like group discipline entails this level. When really what we're doing is with like various sizes of hands, I guess, just pushing waves in a bathtub. Like we only have so much control as to where they go.
I just have to add to this very quickly. You know, it is also absolutely true that when it comes to being an organization, like having national groups to act as like a public spokesperson or raise money or push back on legislation that's poor, trans people do not have the same resources that gay men have, that women have, that black people have. You know, all these marginalized groups in the United States have managed to build effective, professionalized, you know, advocacy groups. You know, the transgender people have some, but I invite you to go look on Open Secrets of what their budgets are. It is not nearly enough to even begin to push back against this legislation. Something I think that's really, really destructive, Jenny, even though I don't agree with many of your assessments of intention here, I think we would probably both agree that Twitter has been a disastrous, terrible public spokesperson for the trans community because it's largely.
That's exactly what I mean. Because
if I could finish, you're talking about younger people generally who are in the middle of trauma, in the middle of transition. They're hurting. They're trying to express this feeling, I have value to the world. And it comes out in ways that they're childish. Yeah, I'm an adult. If you're asking me...
Uh-oh.
Let her finish.
Children is an excellent thing to fight for and strategize around. You can't say no to that. That's a much stronger argument. But what I would posit to is you're presenting this as some sort of intellectual or moral failure when it's a reflection of the lack of resources and the fact that the trans community has been relegated to trying to speak on social media because no one in reality is trying to speak for these issues.
So I use those issues specifically, but they aren't it's not solely on trans people. I see it in progressive spaces in general, is the way that it seems to benefit progressivism. I mean, it seems to benefit the people who talk about it far more than the people that the movement is actually supposed to benefit.
I think I respect where you're coming from. I don't mean this personally. I think that's a very dark assessment, and I don't think there's any evidence for that. I think you have kids that are genuinely hurting, and I think social media has trained a lot of us that the best way to see our values reflected in the world is to say what they should be on Twitter or Twitch or YouTube and put it out there. I think it's a value statement. I think it's deeply cynical to ascribe motives to that when it's so deeply individualized. You just can't say that on a mass scale.
I think the evidence for it is the lack of progress that you've brought up, is that people aren't interested in forming these things that, like you mentioned, the fact that forming these political groups would be a useful and beneficial thing for marginalized people to do.
Mm-hmm.
But so much energy isn't devoted to that. And it's not the case that trans people just across the board don't have money. There are plenty of wealthy trans people. There are plenty of trans... There's such a stereotype about trans people is that we're all programmers who make loads of money working for Silicon Valley tech companies, right? It's not like there's no money
is
going on.
rife among the trans community. That's.
I'm not saying it's not,
argue.
but I'm saying
if you're
there are
trans
trans people with means who could do this.
Sunday is correct, and poverty is endemic in the trans community.
I never said poverty isn't an
no,
issue.
But you're
with
giving
trans
the
people.
general impression that a solid proportion of them are not just well-off but wealthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. Wait, do you think there aren't wealthy trans people?
You have a lower population that, on a whole, is poorer than the cisgender cohorts, and you think there's like $50 million it's easy to raise to go build a first-tier organization? Like, are you old enough to know about the history of HRC and the things that have happened with trans people over the years? Because I've been here like 80s, 90s, nils, this entire push the way. And what historically you've seen is gay men pushing the trans community over to the side. Obama did this with the Affordable Care Act, actually nixed transgender health care at the last minute. There's entire history here that makes this structurally difficult. And I think it's simplistic and inaccurate to ascribe it to, like some moral failing of some anonymous accounts.
What's the percentage of population that's trans?
I've seen various studies. I think it's a very difficult thing to measure.
Well, what's the population what's the percentage of population that's Jewish? Let's ask the real questions in here, because they got lots of money for their organizations, don't they?
I'm not going to touch that.
Wow. Okay.
Just saying. Okay.
Wait. So you said that Jenny was ascribing particular motives behind what trans people were doing in these, like the Hogwarts legacy discourse or whatever, right? I was hearing the effects that it had. Maybe Jenny, were you outlining motives or?
So I mean, again, I wasn't talking about trans people. I was talking about progressives in general. Okay, and I would say a lot of progressives are people from pretty privileged backgrounds. They're not all like destitute poor people. The kind of people on Twitter calling for like a $20,000 minimum wage are not like generally destitute poor people. They're pretty well off white people.
I think to bolster, so to more charitably phrase and bolster Jenny's argument. So first of all, let's dump the wealth thing, because even if some trans people are wealthy, on average, I think trans people are probably going to skew a little bit less wealthy. If we think about where like the money in society lies, it's going to be probably with older, wealthier, or probably with older, whiter people that come from like a history of money and stuff is going to be where most of your money lies. Trans people probably largely don't have access to a lot of that for a variety of reasons. I think most of us probably agree with that, and the percentage is really small. I think the issue is that it feels like a lot of the most crazy cultural, hot battleground issues for trans people, just in my feeling, come around a lot of issues that most trans people don't care that much about. And I could be wrong here. I can only go by who I talk to, but like I get a lot of like when trans people and like Leah Thomas and stuff is brought on, it feels like there's a lot of eye rolling where it's like, I wish that the conversation wasn't on like the niche of the niche of the niche fucking issue constantly, or like should like are 4-year-olds allowed to declare themselves as like a trans baby or something? Like these are such minutia issues that Republicans get on Twitter, libs of TikTok blow up into huge issues, and then every progressive wants to fight about how like they're gonna have a 2-year-old baby that's non-binary, and it's like holy fuck.
Well,
and I feel like for a lot of that fighting, the main people on the battleground aren't necessarily like the everyday trans person. It's the person on Twitter that like wants this to be like the new sexy area to fight in.
That's not so small an issue, though, because the capacity to access HRT prior to puberty is a reason for a lot of the mental illness and a lot of the poverty resulting from the mental illness that takes place in the trans community. It's a hell of a different thing for somebody who's been on puberty blockers to decide they want to fully transition in adulthood than someone who hasn't and has to contend with my bone structure. Like it's hard.
Thanks. I don't think anybody here disagrees with that.
Okay. Katie, I know you wanted in for a little bit. I'm going to give you some chance to kind of weigh in on this if you have something to weigh in on.
I had something to say about the previous point, but it's fine if we don't want to go into that.
No, go ahead.
So I think there's like just a slight maybe misunderstanding in terms of maybe the language being used. Because when people say like enforce and discipline and make progressives, I guess, be Twitter literate or stuff like that, I think me and Sunday tell me if I'm wrongly speaking in your behalf, but I'm like, how do you enforce that on a bunch of individuals that aren't organized under like an organization or anything like that?
Well, the problem too is that, if I may just hop in really quickly, an additional problem there, and this came up with the Hogwarts Legacy thing that was brought up earlier, when you attempt to enforce discipline against contrary groups within the overall movement, such as it is, that now gets picked up by opponents of the movement and used as a weapon against the whole.
Yeah, I think it's just like, I thought it was interesting that there was like a misunderstanding, because I don't think me or President Sunday are saying that you can't influence your audience. Destiny and Brianna, I'm sure you guys know, you influence your audiences all the time. So we weren't saying that you can't advocate for your positions. And I thought it was very interesting that like Brianna brought up like criticism of you, and then you said, yeah, if that's what you think, then you should continue saying that to like evoke change. But when you say discipline, or when I hear discipline, she can't make you do something. She can apply social pressure, but she can't like, so, you know, how do I make someone on Twitter stop advocating for a boycott. So it's like,
Isn't
I'm fine.
Isn't social pressure like a type of discipline?
It is a type of
that's
discipline, but
why-
it's not a type of discipline that's rooted in a singular agent's will. People
what?
conform to social pressure and then themselves pressure other people.
Like
and
who, like
where
Agent
it stops and where it
Smith,
begins,
or-
no one ever really knows.
I don't know who you're talking about. Sorry.
Social
Okay, going
pressure
back to
as a dynamic.
yeah, thank you.
Well, that's why I quickly said that it might be like a linguistic or a rhetorical misunderstanding, that we're just using the word discipline differently.
Sure, I guess
when
discipline.
I hear discipline,
discipline
I
can
see
mean
it
very
as-
formally, like I'm docking your pay, or you're going in timeout, or I'm banning your account. But I think there could be like maybe instead of discipline, we can say like social repercussions for certain types of attitudes, right? Like people weren't posting the Black Lives Matter square on their Instagrams because they were going to get fired from their job if they didn't. They did it because there was a lot of social pressure behind it. Same thing for the reasons why people go to protests or show up at events or post whatever they do on social media. I think social pressure is a real way to guide and control people's actions, I think.
Okay, well, I have 2 questions, if you don't mind. First of all is like, in terms of the discussions you guys just had, it sounds to me, and maybe I'm misunderstanding the points, that like the criticism is really about media or like Twitter literacy, or the ability to not act in a unreasonable way online. And I'm just confused why we are acting like this is like a thing that only affects the progressive demographic or something like that. So is that something that only progressives do on Twitter?
No, I think I said earlier, I think this is like, I mentioned it with the catastrophizing everything. I think that every group like has their issues with being silly online. It's possible that it's a little bit more complicated, but we might be seeing Republicans now running into this issue where they had a certain type of behavior that was set in the party by Trump, and now that Trump is kind of getting broken off, they're having to deal with the repercussions of that. So it's not unique to progressives.
Okay, here's the problem though, okay? So stop catastrophizing. That's undermining the effectiveness of the movement, et cetera, et cetera. So you say stop catastrophizing to the trans community in general. Some members of the trans community argue back. There's now disunity in the trans community on this particular issue. The result of what you have done is to actually sow disunity and to decrease the capacity of the trans community to cohere as a unit. And moreover, you will then be pressured back. Like that will constrain what you can put on offer as
okay, so here's my question, because your argument is basically that you can never argue inside of your movement because you're necessarily creating disunity. Can you give me an example of a way?
I'm saying that the criteria for the inside and the outside of the movement.
Stop, all of you. Let Destiny finish his question, and then you can answer.
Yeah, you can answer, say as much as you want. I'm just curious, how can you disagree with your movement then, ever, without sowing disunity?
You can. You absolutely can. The question is not whether or not you can't disagree with your movement, or whether or not there are not cases where it's absolutely appropriate to do so. The question is, can you assign responsibility to progressives as a category in a useful way?
Okay, I'm going to ask the same question again. Can you give me an example of how you can disagree?
When in the act of disagreeing with it, you are also dividing it and giving political capital to their enemies.
Yeah, so I'm asking again for the third time. Can you give me an example of how can you disagree?
Just as you've described, you can absolutely do that. But the question
I know I haven't described it. I don't know how. I'm asking you. How can you?
Is that sufficient to provide the social pressure that gives unity to the group?
Okay, I'm going to ask for a fourth time. Can you give me an example of how you can...
I've answered you.
Oh, okay, I missed it.
I have answered you.
Okay.
I was answering you quite pointedly.
Okay,
Sunday,
let me try. Let me try, if I may.
He's saying
If I may.
you can
Sunday,
disagree.
Just Katie, stop, please. Let me try. Katie. I'm sorry, Sunday. Can you, so say we are both in a movement together, right? And you have a substantive disagreement with something I've done or said. What way would you take me to task for that without damaging the movement? Let's do a little role play here. Let's do a little exercise. So go ahead, criticize me. Go ahead. How would you do it?
Well, I think in the Hogwarts Legacy case, for example, I disagree with Brianna Wu's take that this is a litmus test for who is an ally and who isn't. That being said, I'm not going to respond to Brianna Wu saying, hey, you're an idiot, schismatic, whatever, you're undermining the movement, because that will be taken up by the actual enemies of the movement.
That's how you wouldn't.
I'm getting there. Because that's what that would entail. What I would do is I would have a conversation, in all likelihood, in private. If that failed, then I would go more public, and I would be careful about it. Like sometimes
the
that's
enemies can't find out.
Sorry?
so that the enemies can't find out and use it against them, right?
No,
That's
so what
you're
he doesn't
saying
actually
like that.
disagree at all. He's just saying that like he would try to be a little bit more tactful. But that end thing that you tagged on there because you knew it was necessary is that eventually you'd go public. There's anytime there's disagreement, there is invariably going to be some sort of disunity.
But Destiny, we aren't disagreeing that sometimes you have to disagree with your movement. What we're disagreeing about is whether or not the movement itself coheres as a whole, such that you can talk fruitfully about it, being capable of being disciplined towards a particular policy. So when people like Kid and yourself talk about the threat to progressives being from inside the movement, well, what are we talking about? Who are we talking about? Is it just people who agree with you? Like, what are we referring to?
I don't even know what that statement meant. I think
Could I add on to that, because I think I have some evidence that
Please help me understand what's
that
going
proves
on.
Sunday's point.
Okay.
So you had first I want to do just a very brief fact check. Sunday, that was not. I never said. I forget your exact wording. That like anyone that buys Hogwarts is a terrible person. That's not my position. I don't believe I've ever said that. But so I just want that out
fact-checked.
there on the public
fake
record.
news.
Destiny. So one of the things I'm going to grant you that perhaps this was a hyperbolic statement on your part, but I've seen you say stuff to this effect many, many times. The fact that you're the only one out here doing this kind of work. In fact, the last time you debated President Sunday on your Keffel's manifesto, you made a statement saying Vosh isn't doing anything worthwhile. Hassan isn't doing anything worthwhile. He's just out there for clout. I'm the only one out here doing stuff. Now, I want to be really clear. I think I've said on this debate today, I think DGG has done some important work in the past. I think Vosh has done, I think he brings a valuable viewpoint to the floor. I think Keffel's brings a valuable viewpoint to the floor. And I think Hassan makes progressivism cool to an entire generation. All those things that have value. So in my mind, you know, it's like when Vosh says stuff that's wildly sexist, and he does, I sit there and I take a breath and I go, but is he generally doing the right thing? Is it worth it to me to have to really go to war with him publicly? That answer is no, right? And I think that sometimes if you're really interested in coalition building, something I've learned as I've gotten older is it really behooves you to pick your battles more strategically. And again, this is why I really decided to let the fight with DGG and you go, because I do think you're doing good work. And I think that, you know, Vosh can be over here doing his thing, Keffels can be doing hers, and you can be doing your thing. I think all these things have a non-zero additive value for the movement. And I think politics is fundamentally about addition and not subtraction.
Yeah, so my issue is that when it comes to, this is just a general trend I felt, it might be just the corner of the internet that I'm in, it feels like progressive content creators online are first and foremost concerned with self-enrichment, and that's it. That's the only thing that matters. The only types of activities that they'll participate in are also ones that either up their clout or up their money. And anything outside of that just doesn't exist. So when I look at people, and then obviously these are my two best friends in the world. One is Nick Fuentes. He started his whole little like political movement. And there's a lot of work that happens outside of that that's not just clout building, but it's like real on the ground work to hold conferences and to have like to talk to people. Or when I look at my other best friend, Lauren Southern, will go out of her way to do like documentary stuff, which is just a horrible like time investment for money made, right? And then I go, okay, well that's their investments. Let's see what are the big figures on the left investing in. And I look at like Hassan and Vosh. Every single decision that these people make is only ones that are coinciding with self-enrichment. And there's no sacrifice, there's no building of anything like really valuable. They do things that end up being like kind of beneficial. Like it's cool that Hassan raised a bunch of money for Turkey, but ultimately like they only do it because it like ups their clout. Like that's like the main reason why people do donation drives, because it's huge clout, huge viewer builders. And it just sucks that we have so much money on some of these people on our side, and they don't want to spend any of it or do anything to build towards like real world political change. You mentioned the Georgia shit that I did. That was with a single announcement. And I had to stop doing it because I got too many people. The single announcement, I got 300 people canvassing for like a special election. If Hassan were to do that and were to seriously promote it, I bet he could drive over like 3,000 to 4,000 people to a single event anywhere in a particular spot in the United States. It would be like the biggest canvassing event in U.S. history. But there's no like desire to do it.
Something similar.
No, Vosh did nothing. Vosh has done nothing like that at all, unfortunately.
Can I ask?
Perhaps,
if I may interject interject, I'm curious, right? Because you pointed to figures on the right that that are involved in activism in the small way. You pointed to Fuentes. You pointed to Lauren Southern and things like that. Do you think that there is something substantively different about the community in the right wing spaces that makes that more likely to happen than it does in the left?
I grew up in Mississippi. I do believe that. I didn't vote for a single Democrat until I was, what, 23?
Okay, what is that thing? What is that je ne sais quoi, as they say, that makes it that the right will do this more
It's less
than the left does?
fragmented. It's less fragmented. Like your church, it's more of a monolithic culture. Your church is there to do it. Fox News is telling you to do it. You know, there are people like, you know, the Republican leaders in town. It's just more organized. So I think that's the difference. I do want to come back to this because Destiny, I fully agree with your view that Vosh and Hassan and all those figures should do exactly the steps that you're taking. I agree. But that is respectfully a bit of a Texas two-step from what I said. I think my objection would be, and again, I think you're someone who at your best does extremely valuable work. Thank you for going on Fresh and Fit. I really value that. But I think that you personally spend a lot of your time going after people that you perceive as enemies. And I think that's fundamentally something that's not coalition building. I don't think Hassan, I think he has his differences with you. I don't think he mentions you very often. And I think that the most basic test for your own moral standards is, do you follow those yourself? And respectfully, I don't think that you do sometimes.
I don't really want to make this like a personal,
Sure.
me versus Wash or anything like that.
That's fair.
Yeah,
That's
I don't have moral standards around people attacking people. I have no problem with people attacking people. I think
Sure.
I think it's fine if people attack people. So I don't know if I would necessarily consider that a violation of my standards. If people want to do good stuff, I usually congratulate them. I'm not gonna come down on Vosh if he does decide to do something beneficial, or even Hassan. As much as I'll make fun of people for people fundraise for clout, it's still good to fundraise. But I think that there's a bigger problem going on where when left-leaning figures get really popular, none of that money is going towards any good political projects ever.
Yeah.
It just goes towards self-enrichment.
And to contrast that with the right, the right has whole media kind of empires that they're building together with their money, right?
And Steven didn't have Nick Fuentes in his bedroom for money. He did it for love.
Maybe. I'm not going to speak to that. But what I will speak to is that from my observation, right, to echo a little bit of what Destiny is saying, I tend to see, and this might be just I'm blind to other examples, right? And that totally may be a case where I'm just not seeing the examples on the left. But the right is able to leverage their clout and their money and their finances in a way that is much more organized and much more messaging, with a lot more messaging control than the left is. Now, we see Trump attacking DeSantis now. Trump's kind of the wild card, right? Trump's creating a lot of division. But for the most part, I would say that conservatives and conservative movements tend to be much more lockstep than the left. And I'm just curious as the panel's why? I still haven't kind of gotten that answer, but I don't know.
I gotta pee. Can I just walk off?
Yeah, I don't, man, go pee. You don't have to have a whole task. Go ahead. Go ahead, Katie. What's up?
I think it's straightforward. We're a Big Tent party. With the
Don't let her talk over you, Katie. Fight her.
Speaking, is it is white, straight, Christian. It's a very homogeneous culture. I think if you look at the left, one of our big challenges, and the reason we always have to outwork the right, is we have all these various groups that don't necessarily want the same thing, and all of them have trauma, and all of them think they should be in the driver's seat, right? So I think it's just I think it's inherently a more difficult proposition. Also, if I was a billionaire tomorrow, first thing I'd do, Destiny, is you keep talking about building this Daily Wire thing. I think I think the left needs some large broadcasting apparatus, and I wish to God I could get you and Vosh and Jank at Young Turks and Sam Cedar and everyone together in just one place, setting the culture and putting out our messages for the day. because I think that the right has an apparatus to set the news cycle, and the left simply does not. And I think it's very much to our disadvantage.
So I just quickly checked. Vosh did Progressive Victory 2020. I'm not saying it's like what you did. I'm not saying it's canvassing. I'm not saying he touched grass. I don't know. But he did do that, and that was something. So I just wanted to point that out. I had a question, and it refers to the Twitter discourse from a long time ago. It might be just like pointing out hypocrisy, so you can just dismiss it as like it's not the same thing. But if we're complaining that progressives, especially on Twitter, are like policing each other and other people in a way that they're like telling other people, you're a bad person if you buy this game. But then our attitude is like, we should socially sanction them to stop that behavior. I just want to know how that's different and why one is good and one is bad. Just because of efficacy?
Well, it's like asking, like, let's say you've got a group of people excluding other people, and then you're like, well, we need to exclude that people that are excluding the other people, and you're like, oh, so you're the same as them. Well, not necessarily. So I understand what you're saying.
So
that like
do you think
you think that so you think that my issue is that people are policing each other too much, but if I'm policing somebody that's policing somebody else, I'm like doing the same thing basically.
Well, I just think because I agree that I'm not making like the intolerance, like what's it called?
Paradox of
The paradox of intolerance.
I'm not making that argument. I'm just not sure how. Even if people are being obnoxious and annoying and maybe even harmful to progressive causes because they alienate other people who read their tweets, I'm not sure how that's like excluding or being in a way so harmful that is worthy of the same type of like social condemnation. I don't know, that just seems like regular, you can say whatever you want even if it's dumb, you know?
I mean, I think it's important to be able to hold your movement accountable. I think it's important to be able to hold people accountable for like...
For what?
For doing things that you think are ultimately detrimental to the overarching goals of your movement, right? I imagine...
Then can I ask you something?
Ask away.
Do you think there's a difference between regular people who are part of a movement, as in they gain the benefits from the movement and stuff like that, and advocates? So is a trans person like a representative of the progressive movement?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay, so can I judge all people on Twitter that express their takes to be like, you're being bad for progressives, like it's their job to be the best all the time in how they present progressivism?
Yeah, I think you can.
Why? I mean, I know you can. I'm just asking, how does that make sense?
Because
why is that reasonable?
Well, because when you go out and you advocate on behalf of something, you, in a way, become an advocate. I think that giving a take to friends and family is one thing, but when you start to say something on a public platform, when you're advocating for something on a public platform, you've become an advocate for the thing. And with advocacy, I think, comes some level of kind of responsibility for how you do that advocating.
Yeah.
So if somebody says... Yeah, Brianna?
No, go ahead.
So if somebody says that they are offended by the stupid Hogwarts game, whatever the fuck, and they don't want people to buy it, is that advocacy? Because they tell people what to do, or do they need to put a paragraph where they say why it's bad and then they're advocates? Like, how do we...
I mean, if you say something like, oh, like, it sucks that so many people are buying the Hogwarts game, I think that's whatever. But as soon as you start, like, giving commands to the public, yeah, you're advocating for something, right? I don't think anybody should buy this game. It makes you transphobic. I don't think anybody should buy this game. It's a test of character. If you support trans people, you can't... These are, like, advocacy messages. And I think with social media, anybody can be an advocate.
Better and for worse, to be honest.
I disagree, but...
Yeah,
well, wait, how can you disagree with that?
If you have shared social goals, like, that is enough to be able to put the onus on people. If people are saying, like, hey, like, we have these shared social goals, we're going to do this, and you're like, wait, hold up, this is counterproductive. Like, yeah.
But putting the onus on people is precisely the same kind of command as the former. Which one prevails? I don't know.
I feel like...
There's no firm
wait,
rule
what?
about
What do you mean? Which one prevails? It depends on which message ultimately becomes more popular.
I know, Stephen. But which one becomes more popular is not within the power of the person who is proposing whatever.
I feel like you have this a magical ability to say nothing every time you talk. I don't understand what you're saying. Like, there's no guarantee that if you advocate for something, there's no guarantee.
That's probably why you ran until you had 3 wingmen.
Okay. I don't know why you're like making this weird assumption that like anybody here is saying you can guarantee a certain type of outcome when you do some advocacy. There is no guarantee. Sometimes you advocate for things, sometimes you fail. Sometimes you might advocate for things and fail for those things, and then it actually hurts your movement. But that's all part of advocacy.
Because unless you can, then saying we need to enforce or we need to exert social pressure on has no meaning.
But you don't know. But you don't know. You don't know if you can until you try, right? Nobody knew that we could do anything with trans stuff until you try. Nobody knew we could do anything with black people or women's suffrage until you try. Like you can't just say like these things.
We absolutely had people saying, "Hey guys, cool it down with the gay shit. It's going to offend the centrists and the conservatives too much. It's going to hurt the movement."
But
if we followed your advice, we wouldn't have gotten here.
That is absolutely not true. Okay,
that is
there are ways that you can.
True.
There are ways that I know that if you speak slow, it feels like you make a good point, but you're not. There are ways you can advocate.
No, if I speak slow, I become audible through whatever it is you think you're doing.
Hey, Sunday, let Destiny fish, and then you can respond. I'll give you all the time in the world to respond. But
it's so much more fun when you can make the snide comments in the middle of every single thing I say, though. You can achieve social movements by advocating for certain things, and you can also set back social movements by advocating for certain things. For instance, there were huge disagreements in the black community over whether or not there should be violence at protests. MLK was a big believer in nonviolent protests, and they enforced it socially. Before every protest, they'd line people up. They would gather any type of blunt object, any type of knife or whatever, because they didn't want to run the risk of that happening. There were violent protests after MLK died, and people argue that those violent protests are the things that swung elections, that a lot of people like Nixon get elected post MLK's death. So like there are good ways to advocate for things, there are bad ways to advocate for things, and bad ways to advocate for things lead to generally bad like outcomes in relation to what we want, and good ways to advocate for things lead to good things that we want. I mean, it's as simple as that. So I think that like just because you want to police a movement doesn't necessarily mean you disagree with the goals afterwards, or you disagree with the things the movement is trying to effect. It just means that you want to like go about it in a way that's going to lead to the outcomes you're looking for to be more likely to be affected, I think.
If the thing you're advocating for has the effect of disadvantaging the movement you're ostensibly advocating for, then your actions are against the movement.
Hold on, wait. Why do you always ask? You're smart enough to know the words that you're saying, so why do you beg the question so hard? Why would you utter this sentence? Hold on, I'm just so curious. Why would you say, if you advocate for things that hurt your movement, I'm not advocating for things that hurt. Obviously, I don't think that.
There are the words that you say, and there are things that the words do, and sometimes these are not related to each other. Sometimes, for example, the true statement said at the wrong time.
Hey,
sorry?
Sunday, can I try?
No, I want to know what he was asking. What part was confusing him?
Well, I think it's confusing all of us. Okay, I think we're all confused because I want to know, can you give me a specific example of something someone either on this panel or someone you know, doesn't have to be on this panel, has advocated for that is hurting progressive causes?
Well, as a case in point, Stephen was caught in a lie last year, pretty categorically. He insisted that he couldn't positively engage with leftists on the grounds that there was an overwhelming number of progressive of professors and faculty being removed from universities by progressive activists. He required his entire community to assemble a list of roughly 8 people, and when he started studying them himself, he laid bare 2 things. First of all, he wasn't familiar with any of these, which means that the statement that he had the evidence of an overwhelming number of professors and faculty being removed from universities is evidence that he couldn't engage positively with the left was a lie, because he had never done such. And secondly, that this was actually not taking place. So in effect, what he was doing by saying that was actually giving weight to a right-wing talking point, and in the course of criticizing the movement was actually giving fuel to the right as it was persecuting the left.
Wow. I fail to see how he was advocating for something there, though. Like,
what do you mean how he was advocating for something?
What was he advocating?
He declared that professors were being persecuted in schools and were being removed to an overwhelming degree.
If you think he was wrong, he was wrong. But that wasn't advocacy. That was an observation.
No, that wasn't an observation. No, you're actually missing. You're actually missing the point. It wasn't just yes, because it wasn't an observation, because he didn't know. He didn't know of any examples. He had to go through them one after the other. It was a lie. When he said he had an overwhelming number of them, it was a lie. That's a claim. That's a claim that he has evidence. That's a claim that he has evidence in reserve.
Destiny.
That was a lie.
I don't want to. I don't know why. I don't want to make this like a weird personal battle. Although I know
this is not personal.
That
you
lie. Want to do that, but
you lie to the advantage of the right. While you're claiming here to be a progressive because it suits you. While you're directing audience flow to the likes of Nick Fuentes and Lawrence Southern.
I could only be so lucky. Just to be clear, it wasn't that I had quote-unquote no examples. It's that I'd read a lot of articles and I had a lot of examples, but I didn't have them collected in one place. So I wanted to do like a formal thing before.
Of the examples you provided, you got stuck on the first one. None of the others counted, and even if I grant the first one, your claim was an overwhelming number. You have one. If I grant Brett Weinstein, and we definitively show that it was false.
I don't think we're here to relitigate that entire conversation. Is that what we came here for?
No, we're not. You already ran. This is settled.
Okay.
It's settled. You fled already.
Whatever. Let's move on.
Actually, can I just say, I watched this debate twice in preparation for this. I actually, Sunday, in my view, I think you're being a little less charitable. I mean, Destiny was making a point about why these conversations are important. Why he does that. I don't necessarily completely agree with that logic.
Then he should not. Then he look. Sure. Hey, if that's all he was doing, then he should not have agreed to debate.
I just watched it, and I don't. That's not the impression I got from it. That it was
well, then he shouldn't. Then he shouldn't have agreed to debate, and having found that he wasn't prepared for it, fled silently. He didn't quit.
But didn't you flee from one of the debates with Destiny? Because I was watching this clip in preparation. So y'all had a discussion, and Destiny was talking. You were attacking him in the same way. And Destiny essentially made the point, well, you got to take it one step further. Anyone who's associated with me that could make you complicit in this as well. And you go,
which Brianna? It's Brianna. Brianna.
Yes, you can call me Bree. You can call me Bree.
Bree.
Yes.
That's bullshit, though. That's bullshit. I do not direct a disproportionate audience flow to the profit of a right-winger. When I engage with somebody on the right, Destiny absolutely does. When Destiny talks to Nick Fuentes, when Destiny has just a chummy lunch of chicken and waffles with Nick Fuentes, he allows Nick Fuentes to sell himself on his natural charisma against the critiques that have been levied against him.
If I may ask, do you think maybe Sunday, right, that some of these hypercritical positions you take against members of the community is maybe actually harming progressive causes, like being hypercritical of Destiny, hypercritical of
me and Destiny are not in a community. Destiny is a media clinger on. He's not a member of any community. We absolutely
inhabit the same spaces. He is much bigger than all of us here, right?
By YouTube, what are you referring to? YouTube's not a community either.
Let me try this. We are all here at some form or fashion or another tend to advocate for progressive causes to varying degrees, right? We may not agree all the time. So when I say community, that is what I think when the person Destiny was canvassing for was forced to disavow him on the grounds that he was saying that he'd be fine with rednecks
murdering black
fire
people
on the protesters.
Yes. So based.
I don't think we're a part of the same community at all.
Let me ask. I
don't think we advocate for progressive causes either.
Let me ask the rest of the panel. Do you think what Sunday is doing right now is helping progressive causes? Is he being an effective advocate for progressivism right now on this channel by coming after people and being hypercritical? What do you think?
Sunday, I really honestly have to tell you, my statement there, and please just let me say this and finish. My statement there is you're accusing Destiny of running away from debates.
Yes, I am.
There's a very clear video out there anyone can watch of you running from a debate with him.
I didn't run.
That was really over the top.
I didn't run.
Okay.
I didn't run.
Okay.
I didn't run.
I
didn't run.
But I think if you, and please let me just...
I didn't run.
Please let me get my point out.
Bree.
I'm trying to be respectful here. Just let me get my point out. You can refute it. I do think that I was very frustrated with the video that you brought out about Kyla.
I understand you're very desperate.
I'm going to mute you until that she finishes. Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Wow, more progressive censorship. Sorry.
No, I was very frustrated with this video that you put out, and I think this is a really good example of somehow progressives, we can get so focused on the mission objective and our need to be right, we're not thinking about building things that are important. Yeah, Kyla, in my view, she's someone who is she's a little bit more conservative than I am. I think she has a more instinctual kind of sympathy with causes I don't necessarily agree with. But I think overall, if you look at her work, I think just like Destiny going on Fresh and Fit is very important. I think she is doing the Lord's work. She's out there talking to men, making them feel heard, trying to talk about these big issues in their lives, trying to really bring some emotional sophistication to a cohort that, in my view, is really starving for real connection with one another. I think this is critically important work. And I think if you look at her YouTube channel, like she was interviewing a terrorism expert this week about de-radicalization. Like, it's such important work. And I was so disappointed because I have seen you at your best, Sunday. I thought you I said this before the show, I thought you did a brilliant refutation of Destiny's manifesto against Keffels. I thought it was excellent. And when I see you at your best, I think you are really pursuing and advocating for things in a way that is very persuasive and powerful. I do think sometimes, and I've fallen into this trap myself, you get so caught up in these petty personal mission objectives that I think it gets expressed in a way that is deeply non-productive, like with Kyla. I think if you look at that video, really examine your claims in it, I don't think they hold up.
You mean the just to be clear,
one more sentence. If we are serious about building power on the left, I think a really good question to ask is, how have I failed? How can I do better? What are the standards I need to hold myself to?
I don't know you. Kyla misrepresented her credentials and sells therapeutic advice. And in addition uses the trust she has built with her audience as somebody with a title in mental health to make anti-scientific statements, like, for example, critics of IQ as a measure of human potential, or as anti-science as anti-vaxxers. I think attacking that is actually one of the most important things we have to do. Now, with respect to me, quote-unquote, running from Steven, I don't see how I am running if I don't indulge an endless loop where he insists absurdly that my speaking to him is akin to him giving an opportunity to the likes of Nick Fuentes and Sneeko to sanitize their image before an otherwise condemnatory audience. I think you're out to lunch there.
I don't agree with that. My statement here is very straightforward. I think when you're at your best, you are really able to aggressively pursue some things. I don't know what your exact background is in academia, but I think you're a very persuasive
political
speaker.
Science, thank you.
Okay, correct.
We just want you to do better.
I think it really comes through. I think Kyla in that video is a really good example of you at your worst, and I was disappointed in it.
What do you think? I want to get some other people in here, right? Like I want to give space for Katie here, for Kid Not
You really
Ken,
want that dog pile, huh?
Well, I think it's important to know, like, how, because it's a good example of infighting. Like, what do we think Professor Sunday can do better?
We're not on the same side, President Sunday. We're not on the same side. I'm not a professor. We're not on the same side. I'm not on the same side with Kyle. I'm not on the same side with you. I don't know.
Are you on the same side with me?
No, God no.
Oof.
Fair enough. Kid Not King. What do you think?
Holy shit! Is there an imposter among us?
This just seems like a. I don't know if this is like a fucking intervention or something that I just got invited to, but sure, if you want to, this is like sort of an example of like a condemnation culture, I guess, if you want. I think that's a pretty good example of people just like fucking trying to make examples out of people and assuming malicious intent. The idea that you could have someone like Kyla or something just be like this absurdly evil caricature of herself is just so fucking ironic.
She lied. She lied about her credentials. That's
wow.
A fact.
No, she didn't.
That's a fact. That's a fact. Really?
Oh my God.
What is her credential, Bree? What are her credentials?
I tell you, if you want to have a separate
Can you tell me?
discussion-
No. Answer the question. Can you tell me that? It's a very simple question.
Sure. Yes.
What is she?
She has my understanding of it is she has an undergraduate degree in the Canadian equivalent of psychology.
What's the next one?
Ssir, please let me finish.
I'm watching you Google frantically. Go on, answer.
My hands are right here, dude.
Good.
Oh my God.
Her master's degree is in what is called psychometry.
He doesn't have a
which
master's
is-
degree in psychometry. She has a graduate diploma
Look,
in
if you're gonna
psychological
cut me off
assessment.
and not
She has
let
sold
me
herself
answer
as
the
a
question.
psychometrician and a psychometrist.
Nick,
She
can
is
you
neither.
please mute
She
this?
She has
Who
also
Who
claimed that a
cares?
psychometrist
Who
is the
cares
title of a
about any
master's
this?
degree.
This is bullshit, Sunday. Shut the up, please.
Okay, Jenny, I'm going to mute you too, because that doesn't matter either.
What?
Okay?
I think.
I
Jenny
think-
had
Give me a second. Let's reset.
Sure.
Okay, right? I think this is a good example of we have this whole topic, all these issues to talk about, and what are we doing, right? Oh, is this one person lying about a thing? Oh, let's go get them.
Correct.
Someone who is doing good work, right?
Yes, exactly.
Oh. You guys can argue more. That's okay now, right? I just wanted to say.
Oh,
Hey, I'm good
am
to
I
go.
unmuted again?
Yeah.
Yes, you're unmuted.
I'm just worried Professor Sunday is going to keep jumping in, you know?
President Sunday, not a professor. But thank you. It's the cardigan, it doesn't.
He cares a lot about people's credentials, Destiny. Please don't call him a professor.
My bad. Okay, well, where are we at here? Before...
Okay, so let's.
What's the
talk
biggest
a
threat to
little bit.
progressives?
Well, this is a question, right? So given that we have right all these.
Wait,
these...
I want to answer you.
Okay, Katie, answer the question then. Goddamn. Okay.
Thank you. Okay. I think President Sunday, Professor Sunday, Mr. Sunday, has a certain personality.
Friends call me
Okay.
Mr. President.
Okay, Mr. President, sir. I think he has a certain personality. I think he has people he dislikes. I don't necessarily. I think a lot of his critiques make a lot of sense, and I understand some of his critiques of Destiny. I think everybody or a lot of people feel like some of it is personal, and I don't think that's helpful to the discourse. But I do agree, and that's why at the beginning I asked Destiny if he's a progressive, because while I agree that Destiny does a lot to promote progressive causes, for example, he also does a lot of things that a lot of progressive things are quite harmful or counterproductive to progressive causes. So to say that he's an ally or that we're in the same community or it's like us hurting each other in the community, I'm not sure that me and Destiny are in the same community. I wish we were. He's a much stronger ally than I am. But sometimes, or a lot of the time, my opinion, he chooses to do things that are harmful to causes that I believe in. So I wouldn't be on the same team as that. You know, it's not that complicated.
So how many sins does it take to get you kicked out of the progressive movement?
7.
Is that really what I said, or is that a very weird interpretation of what I said?
Can you? Well, you said right, and this is what I heard, that we have a person. I won't personalize it, right? We have a person advocates for a lot of progressive causes, but there are certain things about them that I don't like. To what extent, or how many sins, right, do they have to commit? How many differences of opinions do they have to have before we're not on the same team anymore?
Well, I think it would depend on. I think it's very individual. So I think every person with their ideology have their own thresholds of what they accept and what they not. For example, Vosh says that he's a progressive, that he's a leftist, right? And he has a lot of things that he tries to be conscious of. But he says, I'm going to say the R slur, and I don't care, right? And that's my threshold, right? Whether I agree with it or not doesn't matter. I think it's individual. Destiny doesn't answer a lot of my thresholds, so we're not on the same team. Maybe if he and I talked, and it would be different. Like, you know, I think it's very
It's just a label frogging
individualistic.
thing that was happening earlier. It's like, what are you trying to do as a progressive? What is it that you're trying to do?
Well, I think we have to be careful here because, like, it's reasonable to want to
Wait,
cut some...
can I respond?
Okay.
Let Destiny answer, and then you can respond. Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, because he was kind of directing it fair, but I think it's fair to, like, want to gatekeep your movement a little bit. Otherwise, you would have no movement, right? Like, if somebody's like, I'm a progressive, I push a lot of progressive values, I just happen to, like, kind of think that we should bring back slavery, like, that's probably a person that you don't want in your movie. Like, okay, you're not, like, I don't fuck with you, right? So it's fair, but it's going to be hard to say, like, well, what exactly is the cutoff, right? Like, I believe that, like, what if somebody believes in minimum wage and they believe in helping disadvantaged communities, and the biggest driver of their belief in that is they think that there's, like, realistic differences in IQ because of the skull shapes of minorities. That's also probably somebody you don't want, even if they land up on policy positions. But it's going to be impossible to give a coherent answer saying that, like, how many sins does it take to remove a person from your movement? There's going to be, like, a broad family of ideas, and somebody has to kind of hit on enough of these to feel like they're enough of an ally to keep around. I just happen to think that progressives, like, test on way too many of those things, but obviously different people in the movement are going to disagree.
I agree with you, Destiny. So here's a look. I'm an engineer. My bias is towards pragmatism hugely. In fact, I think it's one of my limitations. So this is my honest question to you. If we agree that is an utterly worthwhile goal, what do we do to get there? Because I think you can try to model better behavior, and I think all of us have a responsibility to be more judicious in how we advocate for various causes. Like, what else can we do to get a progressive movement that's going to stop focusing on this tyranny of minute differences that is not getting us any political power? What are our options there? Because that's the important question here. How do we get to where we want to go? You get off the train, like as far as us moving this country to where it needs to be, you get off that train a little bit before I do. Sunday, I think I get off a little bit before you do, from my estimation of your public statements. But all of us agree we need to go in this direction. Yeah. So
I think the issue is that,
how
like,
do we do this?
I think what you have to do is you have to be willing to advocate. The biggest frustration with progressives is there's a lot of ideas that progressives have that everybody should be on board with. Like,
but they just don't make money.
Right. There's an argument to be made. Brianna, you probably know this better than I do. Brianna, right?
It's Bree. You can call me Bree.
Okay, Bree. You probably know this better than I do, but I think Manchin was the only one standing in the way of the $15 an hour minimum wage. I think that was before the Senate at one point.
It was Sinema as well.
It might have been Sinema and Manchin.
Yeah.
But there might have been support there. There might have been support for $12 an hour minimum wage.
Sure.
But we went for 15 or broke, and we didn't get 15, and now we have nothing. The inability, I think, of progressives to have like any kind of middle ground, because anytime you even say that, people like President Saturday over here are like talking about like the letter from a Birmingham jail.
Monday.
They're like, oh, like the white moderate, you guys are preventing any progress because you're not going for the most extreme thing. I think there's a lot of things that that progressives advocate for that most of the American population would believe in, and I think focusing on those commonalities would be good. Like things like police reform. Like, I think nobody wants innocent people killed by police, but like when it gets slanted so heavily in a racial manner, or when we get into this like ACAB, defund the police, like, well, now we've lost like 80% of the audience. That's the issue again that I have with the lack of progressive focus.
Yeah. I agree with that assessment. I really do. And I do have to say, and I don't want to get into like Senate baseball here, but in my estimation, I don't think the progressives have much power in the Senate as far as directing the compromise that the Senate was going to do there. But I agree with your overall point that, sometimes if I'm hungry, I can get half of a sandwich instead of a whole sandwich. I think I'll take half the sandwich.
Or what about like some type of like dramatic gun reform where we say like, fuck it, have your AR-15s, keep your rifles, I think it's like 300 people a year die from rifles, like 20 to 60,000 if you count suicides die from handguns. It's like, here, you know what? Have your rifles. We're not going to regulate them anymore. And then let's talk about like nationally what we want to do with pistols and handguns, right? But that's like a compromise. And that's not even a progressive thing. That's liberals too. But like that's a compromise where if you made it, you could get some serious headway, I think, in gun legislation. But like people being unwilling to budge ideologically ends up hurting the greater goal.
Well, can I ask though, Destiny, on that
Actually,
point?
Wick, before you say that, can I just add some expertise here? Because I'm the only person here that's run for the House of Representatives. I strongly agree with that. In fact, I think the primary process, because the United States has gotten so much more polarized, it makes it extremely difficult to have those exact kind of compromises. Like I tried to primary Stephen Lynch, who's a very centrist Democrat. I don't apologize for doing that, but that threat of the primary is really making it harder for politics to compromise overall. So that's I think it's an effect of a polarization, and I think it's also a consequence of frankly a generation of leadership in the House and Senate that is very timid.
But the question to then at this point to you and Destiny at the same time is, who gets to give up their causes so that the rest of us can get what we want? Like you mentioned gun reform. I think that's relatively reasonable, but other people have said, Hillary Clinton said, we don't need to focus on trans issues. Just don't focus on them. We need to throw those, throw that cause out the wayside and concentrate on other things. So it's easy enough to say, yes, we should compromise. But then when we ask people, okay, what are you willing to compromise? That's where the rubber meets the road, right? That's where it becomes more difficult. So how do we get people to be more willing to sacrifice?
Oh, dude, this is the best part, because it's all about coalition building, right? Like you go over there and you bring in people, like you find out how many coalitions you can bring together. Let me give you a good example. Here in Massachusetts, we had one of these right-wing nutjob groups that tried to pass a transgender ban in bathrooms here in our very fine Commonwealth. You had a bunch of different groups that got together, and they didn't take the most extreme version of this talking about trans people in sports or anything like that, but they're just garnering political power from, all these various organizations and said, this is how we're going to counter it. It was a brilliant example of coalition building. That's politics.
Could I just I think you said something really poignant there about like the polarization of people.
Sure.
And also like in turn the isolation of those polarized groups where it's like we all have to kind of act as a monolith now that we're here, now that we're in this corner. It's in coalition building is a really big one too, but I feel like it seems like the environment that people live in ideologically is just so secluded and separated from like the other side of polarization that nobody knows what the fuck is going on over there.
Yeah.
And there's like very little exchange happening back and forth where people can actually like start to understand these things and like maybe stop this polarization so much where it's not this like this huge monolith that you have to uphold, but maybe there can be some back and forth there.
I agree with you. The understanding is good. I think something that's been very helpful for me is having grown up in Mississippi, right? Like I truly do understand how conservatives think. I adhere to and just one more thing. I also think that's why there's a lot of value in what Destiny does in interrogating and interacting with people on the right. I think that overall is a good thing to do.
Yep.
I believe in a very self-interested format for politics where I think I can be utterly self-interest. I don't know if I need to know the other side, but I think if I know I'm going to get something, that's how the coalition building is working, right? Like if you went out to Mom's Demand, right? Fine group, you should definitely go to a meeting. If you went out there and proposed to them like just a handgun ban, I can 100% promise you they would leap at that, right? So it's just this bread and butter politics that you don't get online if you're not actually going out and participating in real world politics.
Okay. Polarization is an interesting topic, an interesting question. We have about 20 minutes left, so let's get into it a little bit. I think that Katie, right? You mentioned a few things earlier about how, well, you can't be on certain people's teams because they have different positions than you. One of the things that happens, I see online in these spaces, is someone will give an opinion and boom, all of a sudden they're labeled 10 ways to Sunday. No offense, President Sunday, right? But 10 ways to Sunday, where they're like, oh, you don't think trans people should be in sports? You're a transphobe. You must be conservative. I bet you're also a fascist. I bet you also believe this. I bet you also believe that. How do we fix this, Katie? Come on. Give us the answer.
How do we?
Floor is yours.
Well,
how do we fix it?
Again, I think there's a difference between advocates and regular people. So if you interact with someone on an interpersonal basis, you're going to react differently. When I say Destiny's not on my team, I mean Destiny has a big platform. He's a big boy. Definitely doesn't need my allyship, right? So I'm allowed to judge him a bit differently than what I would a person that I'm just randomly talking to. Now, maybe I talk to someone and they have shitty opinions. I live in Israel. Everyone I talk to have very racist, shitty opinions. You know, that's just how it is. And because of where my threshold is, they're not on my team. You know, it's very easy. Other people who might have slightly less racist opinions, hopefully I could convince them otherwise. We can talk through it, and then eventually we could be on the same team. But that's kind of what I meant with everyone have their own distinctions. And then Brianna and Destiny said so. It's just about like realizing when you agree with someone enough to be able to work together, and when some stuff are just like a no-go, you know?
Yeah,
I can't solve people being prejudiced, you know? Like, I don't understand.
Well, like for example, Destiny found Nick Fuentes enough of a kindred spirit to invite him to his bedroom.
And chicken and waffles. And I gave my wife to him for one night.
Only one night? He traveled a long way, Steve.
Well, that's because I was with him the other nights.
I had a question for you, if that's okay.
Who, me?
Not you.
Oh,
Brianna.
sorry.
Yeah, what's up?
Because you have a lot of experience with like IRL politics, right? And
Yep.
I'm an online person.
Sure.
So a lot of the discourse right now is about blue-haired, crazy Twitter people saying crazy things on Twitter, which is definitely only a progressive thing, right? Wink. But what about like IRL progressives that do actual grassroots work? Like,
Yeah.
do we have any critiques towards that, or are we saying that the Twitter mob is just kind of like sabotaging their reputation, or?
You know, Dustin, I have my own opinion on this. I would love to know, what was your experience in Georgia when you went down there to canvass? Because first of all, it was really cold.
My
And,
experience in Georgia was
yeah,
fine, but that's because I'm brutally honest when I get on calls. When we had calls
Sure.
with some Democratic leadership, I said, hey, look up my shit. I talk about BLM and people getting shot. You probably don't want anything to do with me, but if you guys want to meet for lunch or dinner, we could chat. Like, that's cool. Because initially they wanted to like bring the mayor out and have him take photos with us. And I'm just very blunt because obviously I know at this point, I'm like, I don't know if you want this smoke. Okay, it's not good for you.
Sure.
Well,
Let me be more specific about why I'm asking. So I'm assuming, and please tell me if I'm wrong, that so you canvassed, you signed up for NGP Van, they gave you a walk list, you went door to door, you worked with groups of people for that election. Is that correct?
Kind of. I mean, we got the van list, but like we cut our own list and everything from the master list and all that shit. We in-house a lot of stuff
really?
because we had,
You did your own data? Did you get the voter file?
No, I think Sejin's gonna kill me if I get this wrong, but I don't know if they cut lists for us or if they give us the big list and then we end up cutting them and then we give it to people. But we got the van list from them. We didn't get the voter data. And
that's
then
probably how
they give.
the van list is like a $40,000.
Yeah. No. I'm not buying that shit, man. Fuck that. And I can usually get it from them because they want you to go on door knock. Yeah.
100%. So maybe this is my perspective, and you can tell me if you're wrong. But if you show up for canvassing, you're meeting at campaign headquarters. You know, they have shifts, right? And you're there with a lot of people that are really different than you, right? You're going to be there with like 60-year-old women. You're going to be there with college kids that are just excited for the first time. You're going to be there with party establishment people. So, you know, in my experience, the progressives that actually go out and volunteer are actually really dependable people. When I was getting on the ballot, which required a ton of signatures, some of the best people that we worked with were marijuana legalization advocates. They were happy to sit in front of Stop and Shop and just ask people and get signatures all day. So in my view, the progressive activists that actually go
Imagine
out
turning
there
off
and
centrists
volunteer,
and conservatives on marijuana of all things. Such a
I mean,
such a
it
meaningless
works.
thing.
I think one of the big issues, and Brianna or anybody else can chime in, and I think this is a problem. I can reflect on my own life for this. I think the problem is actually young people. They're horrible, okay? I think the issue is that young people are very radical minded, but the reasons are, they're two different things. One is something that Brianna said, is that when you are, when you're in politics and you're young, especially if you're in like a minority group, this is something that my trans audience opened me up to. The reason why a lot of these people are some of the most toxic motherfuckers online is because they're bringing a lot of real world hurt into those online spaces with them, right? If you're like a trans advocate and you're 21 years old and you go to online, more than likely than not, in your real life, you've seen some shit that has like you up and made you feel a certain type of way about groups of people, right? And then you run into people like me, you know, cis white dude on the internet who's relatively wealthy telling you like, hey, chill out a little bit, right? Of course you're going to lose your mind, you're going to want to go even harder. So one issue is that young people are pretty radical, which on its own is fine because you should be radical when you're young.
You said you're non-binary.
No. You should be radical when you're young, which is fine. It's part of the development. But the issue is that I think a lot of that has been exacerbated by social media. Whereas in the past, we could be a lot more
Hang on. You had
particular.
non-binary on your Twitter before, did you not?
If you want to text something or anything, you can shoot me a DM afterwards and we can chat, okay?
So are
and then I can talk to you
cis,
about
though?
everything.
Was that a
I can
lie?
talk to you about everything you want to talk about, okay?
Was that a lie? Was that a lie?
I'll tell you anything you want to hear, buddy, okay? So
Was that a lie?
the issue is that we can't
Did you lie?
we can't choose our leaders anymore in terms of like our movements or the spokesman people. What happens is
He's been monologuing.
yeah, people.
you lie?
Him finish.
Sorry,
and
I'm
then
almost
you
done.
can
I'm so
ask
sorry.
the question.
I'll accelerate even more. Okay, what happens is that anybody can become an advocate now because everybody can hop on social media and tweet whatever the fuck they want, and then you get these kids that are young, that are radical, that have a lot of trauma, and now they become like the leaders of these movements, and they cause a lot of like internal strife and stuff. On the progressive side of things, that's really detrimental to even real life organizations. Okay, that's my point. Sorry.
I couldn't agree more. But
Go
I
ahead,
think,
Sunday. You had a criticism?
Is Katie muted?
No, Katie's not muted on my end.
Oh, she muted herself.
I muted myself because I wait for you to let me speak. Okay, so Destiny, do you consider yourself a young person?
Probably not at this point now.
Okay. Do you know that a lot of people think you're really toxic online?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So I don't understand. So young people are more toxic. I don't see this as like an age thing. It sounds like all the criticisms you're making is that social media makes people a bit kooky, which I agree with, but you're also a bit kooky on social media as well.
I am,
So this
but
doesn't seem like a young people issue.
being kooky is my job. I make money by being kooky. If you worked with me on any of the campaign stuff that I do, I am very respectful. I am very courteous. I'll be professional in all my interactions. When I'm working
But you're criticizing Twitter behavior.
No, I'm criticizing people that are ending up like shutting down their organizations because they're trying to like unionize and they're unhappy with like the answers they're getting, and then shit goes fucking crazy. I think this happened with was it the Young Turks, or was it there was another progressive like body where I think the people wanted to unionize, they weren't happy with the answer they were getting, and I think like or was it a publication that got completely shut down?
Are those the young people?
I think a lot of it is led by young people, yes.
Okay, so maybe I misunderstood you, because I thought you were talking about young people with a lot of IRL trauma coming to Twitter, being advocates, and then being radical, and then saying a bunch of shit.
No. Hold on. I'm sorry. To be clear, the original question was, I think, unless I missed something, I thought the original question that Wick asked was, does this carry over to real life organizations as well?
It was.
And I think that what Brianna said before is, I think for a lot of political canvassing, it's a lot of it is actually like middle-aged like women. Are the ones like leading and participating a lot. And generally speaking, things are more chilled out as you get older. There's not as much like kind of like ego, and not to say that there's not drama with local politics, because holy fuck, there absolutely is. But but when you have a lot of young people together that are very active on Twitter and like want their voice to be heard, which is all fine and dandy, but like sometimes it comes out, I think, in really negative ways. Where everything is like very dramatic and shit gets shut down and people get canceled and it gets a little not good, not productive.
So
sorry.
Maybe I'm being like very, very stupid, and I apologize. So the people that are canvassing, there's drama in that, but generally people are chill when they are older. And the young ones, IRL, are they chill too?
Look, Katie, as you get older, generally most people get more
I get the
Wick, are you a moderator or are you a debater? What are you?
Like,
this is my show. I'll do whatever the I want, okay? Right? Like, but
really? So there is no moderation, to be clear. This is a farce.
Uh-oh. He's about to leave. Careful how you answer.
This is a farce. It's all the world's a stage and we are merely players upon it, right? And sound of fury signifying nothing. Fuck that, right? What we're doing here is we're having a conversation. This is a conversation, and I am part of this conversation. I'll continue having this conversation the way I want. Katie, right? In general, people gain more emotional control as they grow older. That's just true. Do you disagree?
Aware.
Okay?
Sure,
so when people make a statement, right? When people make a statement that people who are younger tend to have less emotional control, be more extreme in their politics and more extreme in their reactions, and this causes problems. What is your problem with that statement?
What are you referring?
My problem.
What
with
is the
that
basis
statement,
for declaring that?
Do you disagree with the assessment I have just made?
I don't know on what basis it's made. You just stated it.
Here, can I give a real life example? Then Katie, you can like respond to this. Here, so here's like a real example. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to single out like the trans community, but these are the people that I've talked to the most that are like in a minority community advocate. So here is something that was given to me that's pretty directly tied into age. So a lot of trans people email me. They're saying things like, NB women on campus drive me crazy for this reason, that reason, that reason. All the trans advocacy that exists on college campuses drive me crazy. I got that message over and over and over again from older trans people. I got a few messages though from older trans people that said, yes, a lot of the trans people on college campuses are crazy and insane, but a lot of these people, for the first time in their life, have an open community where they can actually talk about a lot of these trans issues. So of course they're going to be crazy. And I guess to relate it to a person, if you've ever had like the atheist phase in your life when you are finally allowed to go on the internet, and that was the cringiest moment ever when everybody was an atheist in like 2010 on Reddit and shit, but it's because we finally get to shit on God and all that. We escaped our Christian backgrounds. Yeah. But I think that's largely a function of age. That like eventually you kind of like, you get through your radical shit and then you kind of age out of it a little bit and you still want to advocate for things, but you're in a way more chill place and you can get people talking to people that disagree with each other and you're not trying to like cancel and destroy their lives because not everything is like the most like apocalyptic event to you.
Okay.
That's like an age example, yeah.
So Brianna, since you have probably the most experience with like canvassing and political activity, IRL, do you feel like young people struggle with that more?
Yes. I'm sorry. And you shouldn't. Like, I'm thinking of one dude I knew for, it was the gang Michelle Wu elected here in Boston, who, by the way, is a fantastic mayor. If you love progressive politics, you should love Michelle Wu. She's 20 out of 10. And this younger dude got on a bike out there every single day, could cover so much more space than someone like, frankly, my age, even though I run 5-6 miles a day, just had tons of energy, could do it all day long. We gave him a special plaque, medal, just a fantastic guy. He had skills and energy that older people don't. But the fact is, there are a lot more older women showing up to get this done. So it's a hold on, I'm going to finish what I'm saying. You need to not cut me off. So I think that the younger people, when they're there and they're invested, they are excellent. But as a proportion, this is what I mean by social media making many of us fall into a trap. I don't think there's enough modeling at the high end. Destiny, I'm not trying to call you out specifically because I think it's everyone. I think it's Hassan. I think it's Vosh. I think it's everybody. I don't think there's enough of a message for younger people saying, if you really care about this and you really believe in these politics, here's how it happens. Canvassing, phone banking, donating, like the nuts and bolts electoral stuff. At some point, I think those of us that are older and have platforms, I think we have a responsibility to model what effective political change looks like, because it's not just arguing online, in my view.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're not reliable. That's completely understandable.
That's
I guess
not what
I just
I'm saying fewer of them make it a priority on a Saturday, very specifically.
Noted. So we're running out of time. Okay.
Or wait, did Katie have a response to that? I'm curious.
Oh, Katie, do you have a response to that?
I asked if they are more radical. I heard they're less likely to appear on a Saturday or less reliable. So
are they more radical? Yes.
Yeah, it seems to be the case that like when people start becoming politically active, they want to make like this crazy amount of change, become like super like revolutionary types or whatever. I see it a lot in Portland, and these are mostly young people. It just kind of makes sense, especially once people start becoming politically active. They're like, oh, I have political power, I'm going to do fucking everything. And, yeah.
Then I guess I just got confused. What was the Twitter tweeting had to do with that specific comment?
Because people think Twitter equals votes. I can show you mathematical, cold hard data that can show you political ads and social media presence can swing a few percentage points in an election, but the thing that's going to win that more is volunteers and canvassing. That matters a lot more. TV ads are very expensive. They make a big impact.
Look at like the Young Turks and Cenk. That's a huge online media presence. What did he get?
100%.
Was it 1.5% of the vote that he got when he ran? It was a very, very, very low. Not to shit on him or attack him, but to show like the ineffectiveness sometimes of some of the online
100%.
stuff.
Cenk is my boss, and I think he's a great guy. He's raised millions for the Democratic Party. Has never gotten credit for it. He'll be the first person to tell you that.
Sure. I'm not doubting that. That wasn't my point. It's all good. We can keep going.
All right, Wick, go ahead.
Sunday had something to say, and we'll close it out after Sunday makes his final plea to us.
Final plea to what?
Well, you had something to say, Katie.
Well, I haven't actually heard much of a point from anybody on this panel except for Katie. I don't see precisely what I'm pleading for.
Okay, well,
I'm glad you got your connection with Steven, Brianna. I hope one day you're relevant again.
Why are you such an asshole?
This was a farce. Because this is a farce. You said it was a farce.
It does feel a little farcical, I'm going to be honest with you.
It is what it is. I hope everyone enjoyed this farce, right? I hope everyone enjoyed this talk. It was a conversation, and to be clear with you, I don't think it was unproductive. I think we had some substantive discussion. I enjoyed it, and I hope everyone else did too.
Have a good night.
Okay, I want to give everyone. God damn it!
No.
What? Okay,
He ran. Oh no.
At least he waited to the end. I'll turn off these damn nameplates. I'll leave the Wick one because I like the Wick one. But yeah, this idea that he didn't get his whole ass way, so he ran like a little child. Like, this is why we don't win when it comes down to it. When you need to stick it out, when you don't get your own way, when we need to go door to door in the fucking freezing cold in the last 10 people have slammed the fucking door in your face. And
It's
if you
his
can't handle that,
brand.
anyway.
It's
But
his
I want to give
brand.
everyone a final closing thoughts. I'll rant it enough. And thank you for being here. We'll start with Kid Not Kin, and then we'll work our way around. Go ahead, Kid.
Sure. Yeah. I think my final thoughts is just I think people need to be a little bit more like I think what was said earlier about like demystifying these angry trans people online into understanding like the situation that a lot of these people are in and where like a lot of these feelings come from, I think is really good. I think that kind of a practice needs to happen to everybody within politics, and I think that would make the polarization less of a problem, be easier to pass more policy, reach more people, etc. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you for being here. Where can people find you?
Kid Not Kin on all platforms.
Okay. Katie, please.
Destiny, happy to hear that you're progressive. Was kind of confused since Nick Fuentes seems to be doing the hard work and very impressive, and all the other lefty people don't do anything. But okay.
Wait, what? Do you not agree with that statement? I'm so curious on that, because a lot of people get really triggered on the left when I say that. But it's so true, isn't it?
It's just that the fact that you're impressed that Nick Fuentes, someone who's a neo-Nazi, I don't know, has a work ethic or like sacrifices his money versus
is
like,
it not
people
impressive?
Who are sure, it's impressive, but I'm not particularly interested in the impressive feats of neo-Nazis.
Why not?
So why not? That's a good question.
I think it's.
I should hit up Nick Fuentes. I want to hear more about this guy.
Well, I mean,
He's
like,
achieved more politically than you ever will. So
chill, damn.
maybe you give some
We don't
advice
have to
for
be
him.
so f***ing mean in here. You guys are so
I am
mean.
completely fine with that.
I'm sorry, I had to say
considering
something
what
this
person
panel.
is. No, I actually had something to say to you too, Jay. I thought it was very funny in your opening statement when you said that like progressives are concerned about white, like trans women in sports, when conservatives are obsessive about that, and we're just like reacting to it. So I just thought it was a fascinating point that you made.
Can I just say something super quickly on this? You know, I grew up in Mississippi. The only reason I'm a Democrat today, like I grew up Fox News, Sean Hannity, church 3 times a week. The only reason I ever saw the light is because Democrats were willing to go out there and talk to me and express a different point of view. And at the risk of people like President Sunday telling me I'm kissing Stephen's ass, I do think that there's value in engaging with these people, not because I want Nick Fuentes platformed, but I think if you're presenting alternative viewpoints to people that can be persuaded, that has value. It's not something I'm going to do with my platform, but I think I can tell you firsthand, if no one had ever bothered to reach out to me, I don't know where I would be today. So that we have to stop being so fucking obsessed with being right that we don't build anything and we don't win anything. That is the reason progressives are failing.
Super based.
Well, yeah, that's any response, Katie?
Yeah, I have a response.
Not to interrupt all the closing statements, I'm sorry, but this is...
I'm really confused. Who is reaching out to it? Because all I'm hearing is Nick Fuentes reaching out to Destiny's audience and Destiny talking about how he's impressive. So maybe I misunderstood you.
Okay, hold on. When I said
what
Fuentes is impressive, what I'm saying is that the amount that he's been able to accomplish with far less funds and far less mainstream backing than people like Asana Vosh is really impressive. Like, if we did the same on our side with the amount of resources we had, like I said, like, holy shit, like, I got 300 cameras together on a single announcement on a single stream. If Vosh and Asana did that shit together, yeah, go ahead.
So you talked on this panel about how if progressives care about their goals, they should do stuff that are effective to promote their goals, right?
Yeah.
So I have no issue saying Nick Fuentes is very impressive with his achievements. I'm just not sure how promoting Nick Fuentes and shitting on who is a neo-Nazi is helpful to progressive goals. You can say that it's impressive.
I'm not saying
promoting him to your audience is helpful to progressive goals. And you claim to be a progressive.
Yeah, I don't think we should promote him. I'm not saying we should promote him.
You are promoting him, though.
By saying that they're effective advocates for the things that they believe in?
No, by having them on your show, by calling them your friends, by hanging out with them, by legitimizing them.
Okay, that's a fundamentally different type of conversation, which is a fine conversation to have. But what I was just saying is that they're very good at they're very good at like putting their money where their mouth is, basically. And for people on the left, when they get popular online, at least in the entertainment world, it feels like fucking pulling teeth to get them to do anything politically effective, which is frustrating.
Sure.
Cool.
You can find me at Dad Katie. I removed the dough, so it's DATKATEE. I might be coming back to streaming. I might not. I enjoyed this.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you for being here, and thank you for staying till the end. That was very grown up of you. Next
I didn't run.
We have Jenny Matrix, please.
Okay, I think that if you ever want an example of the kind of thing I was talking about earlier about progressivism being a self-serving circle jerk that benefits the people who talk about it more than actual people who it claims to help, I think this conversation is a great example. I think that Katie and Sunday basically just came on and said absolutely fuck all for the last 2 hours. It was absolutely insufferable, and I'm gonna go and kill myself. If I'm still alive tomorrow, you can follow me at Heterodox Takes on Twitter. Thank you and good night. I hate you all.
Thank you for.
I mean, in a video game, by the way.
Yes, in Minecraft, of course.
Yeah, in Minecraft. Actually, sorry, no, I do want to say one thing. I want to say, Brianna, I actually think it was really refreshing hearing someone actually talk about pragmatism in progressive politics, because it is, again, something that I brought up at the beginning is how progressives seem absolutely allergic to pragmatism, and it's insufferable. So thank you for talking about ways that progressives can actually do stuff.
I appreciate it. Thank you for saying that.
Destiny, any final closing thoughts?
I think it's kind of funny in a conversation about like who's hurting progressives the most. It turned into an infighting panel for about 70% of the time. That was entertaining to me. So
fair.
Well, the trick to infinite content is to ask the left why it eats itself, and the left will begin to eat itself just by uttering those words. It's an infinite content loop.
Either that or by inviting President Sunday. Yeah, one of those will.
And it's a combination. You know, we finesse these things. Brianna, any final thoughts?
I just you know, I'm not trying to advocate any standards that I'm not trying to hold myself to as well here. You know, one of the things I learned in rehab, I've been sober for 20 years, is it's often easier to change yourself than the world. And I think if we're serious about building political power, we're going to have to let some things go. And I think we're going to have to hold ourselves to higher standards in how we conduct ourselves. It's a measure I've certainly fallen short on, but it's a measure I think it's worth striving for. When I think about who I am at my best, I'm trying to build things with people, and I'm trying to accomplish things with other people. You know, a man without anyone with him is just someone taking a walk, right? So I think we need to radically reframe how we're thinking about these issues, because you know, just to be honest, Jenny, I agree with your assessment that a lot of the times it's just a circle jerk.
Well,
wait, wait real quick?
Please.
Can I
Sure.
do the thing?
Please.
There was a hard question asked earlier that wasn't a good response to, and you just said something. I'm actually curious to hear your response to it.
Please.
Somebody earlier, I wish I could remember, whoever asked this, take credit for it. Somebody earlier asked, how do you tell people which issues to leave behind? And the trans issue is, the trans question is like a big thing that's like the boogeyman, the specter of like progressive politics right now. When you have trans people that like are seeing all the legislation that's being proposed or passed in some places, when they see all of the alarmist rhetoric online, when they see all these things, and then they feel like people are saying like, listen, this just isn't your time right now. Sorry, we need to talk about other things. How do you get those people on board? Certain people that feel like they have an issue that's important to them. How can people decide what's important to be left behind versus what they need to fight to the death on?
I think that's such an important question, Destiny, and you can't. Like, I'm sure you've seen this in your community. You can't tell someone that's 20 who really strongly feels they're non-binary that that's not important. They don't deserve, you know, equal rights. That's not an equal message. I think, like, if you put me in charge of, you know, the transgender rights movement in the United States tomorrow, what I would do is I'd try to build a storage test of about $10 to $30 million. I'd start pushing back on some of these lawsuits, and I'd focus on something in the same way that gay men in the 90s put everything behind gay marriage, right? They found one thing that everyone involved could agree on, and they used it as a spear to penetrate the armor, and then they were able to get other things afterwards. So I think that there's a real need for leadership. in the trans community. I just have no idea how anyone would start to begin building that.
Okay.
Okay. The thin end of the wedge, as they say. I think that's something that the conservatives use to point to. The conservatives point to this and say that, well, yes, that's why we can't let anything in. And that, I mean, that's another conversation, right? We talked about how conservative responds to threats and things like that. But yeah, thank you for being here. What do you got going on? Where can people find you, Brianna?
Oh, just find me on Twitter if it's still working tomorrow. Brianna Wu.
Fair enough. Thanks for being here, gang. So this was my first YouTube stream. I think it went rather well. If you guys liked the content, you can find me at youtube.com/@wick-tv. You can also find me on Twitter, Twitch, where I do most of my streams, which is twitch.tv/wicktv. No spaces or ats or anything like that. Yeah. Great. So one more thing I've been asked to do by Not So Erudite. She DM'd me, and she asked me to read a statement, which I'll do. The statement is as follows. And this is Not So Erudite saying this. She says, I provide a service where I help people find a therapist in their area. Many people struggle to find a therapist that suits their needs. I have more understanding of different designations and credentials. I charge a one-time fee of $40, supply them with 3 to 5 strong options, and if none of those therapists work out, I give a full refund. Not whatever shit Sunday said. Okay, thank you again for being here.
Wait, can I just share a personal story about her just before we jump off? Because I think this is really important.
If everyone wants to. Well, now we're not ending the stream. I'm just letting everyone go. If people want to call in and stuff, I can give you my Discord link.
100%.
And
this will just take a second.
Go ahead.
You know, I think what I found so disingenuous about Sundays, I did Erudite show, and like I said, I've been sober for 20 years. And what I was really impressed with by her before we were starting it is she made it so clear in DMs before we started that she was not a clinician. She was not there to diagnose anything, despite having a ton of professional expertise here. I can tell you my one-on-one experience with her, she was so careful and clear in delineating her role there that she just wanted to have a conversation that just I think if you know her and understand the way she conducts herself, I think it's really laughable that she's claiming to have credentials that she doesn't. I think it's ridiculous, and I think it's insulting.
Noted. Anything else before we switch to the next segment? Yes? No? Okay. Thank you again for being here, gang. You can stay if you like, or you could go if you like. Either way.
Wait, can I yell at you now?
You can absolutely yell at me. Go ahead.
Okay. I thought it was really shitty and disingenuous of you to just say that, like, you organized a panel and then the left ate itself. Because if the left is, apparently everyone agreed it was just me and President Sunday, we seem to be pretty in cahoots, so I don't know what the talking about, and fuck you.
Sorry, the left designated everyone it didn't like as a liberal, and then it ate them. How's that? Is that a better description of what happened?
Ooh.
Sure. I don't think that's what happened, but you didn't talk much, so maybe you didn't get what happened.
Okay, well, you spoke a lot, but you didn't talk much either.
That's true. But to be fair, other people at least try to shut me up.
Well, can I just ask, though, Katie, do you not think the left eats itself? Do you disagree with that assertion?
Can you define eat itself, and how does that differ from other
communities?
communities?
Do you think that the left has a problem with pushing people out, micro-otherizing, and dealing? Well, I'm not. Oh, you have a 2% difference with me. You're not a real progressive. I'm the real progressive. Do you not see that as a problem that's permeating the left?
More than other communities?
We're not comparing. We're just saying, is this a problem in the left right now? Yes or no? It doesn't matter if it's a worse problem among conservatives or a less of a problem among conservatives. We're not talking about conservatives.
Doesn't?
Among the left, are you just not understanding what I'm saying?
It's like the president of Sunday
strategy. I think I understand what you're saying. I just find your framing to be super uncharitable, so I have an issue with it, right?
How would you frame it?
I think that I heard Destiny say that the left eat itself, but so does the right. They just do it in different ways. And as the leading figure of thought in progressive spaces, I think I can take from Destiny's opinion and say, if we both do it but in different ways, then I don't see how that's a unique critique of the left. Do you get my point?
It's like a unique critique of the left, but like at some point you have to like take the onus on like what you have the ability to change.
Yeah, so kid, you didn't get to talk much too. How do you want to change the left eating itself? Can you give me a solution, please?
Yeah, stop assuming malicious intent on everything. Go outside and treat people better. Yeah, that's it.
Is that for me personally or for all the
maybe.
left?
Yeah, maybe. I don't
Okay.
know.
Ooh.
Okay.
Personal
Well, fine.
attacks on the table.
Well, we have a caller. If we want to bring him in and see what they say.
Bring
Parallax.
him in.
Yeah. Okay, Parallax, what do you think?
Oh, Jesus, I don't know how far behind the stream I must be to have been dragged in just now. Hi.
What's up?
Yeah, you are the content right now, Parallax. Let's hear it.
Hi. Jesus, I am so far behind in the stream. I am listening to the, I just got done with Brianna's comments on President Sunday's video. I don't have a lot to say tonight other than President Sunday being a pedantic son of a bitch, while getting so much wrong is absurd. It's a waste of time in everybody's fucking way, both tonight and in that video. And he should really learn what the word credentials means, because Kyla expresses her credentials very clearly, which is that she has a graduate diploma.
Yep.
And then she expresses her title that she uses at work, which is a psychometrist. Fuck off, you pedantic loser.
It's so disingenuous. She said it 100 times. She's been very clear about that. And I'm sorry, I know probably no one wants to hear a feminist point of view on this, but there is a legitimate, like, it is hard for a streamer, and especially a woman, to like be public about who you are, and this fear is always going to be in the back of your mind that a bunch of nut jobs online are going to find your place of work and target you there and then harm your ability to make a living. I'm sorry, that is amplified for women out there in the world.
Post your private fucking Facebook and contact
100%.
your university. You loser.
Holy shit, I just realized for Kyla, this isn't even the first time this has happened. I feel so bad for her.
He's still a fucking loser.
Can I say this? So, Destiny, do you remember this in your stream, your Keffel's Manifesto stream? Because he came on there and you started, you asked your chat. You asked your chat, hey, does anyone know who this guy is? I might want to have him on our stream, someone else on Sunday's discussion. And then Sunday came on and immediately started accusing you of doxing his friend, trying to dox his friend. This is the problem. He's such a hypocrite. He holds other people's standards that he will not hold himself to, and it's sad.
Sad indeed. We do have one more person. Was there anything else, Parallax, that you wanted to ask to the panel, or was it just the erudite stuff?
No, I did that. I wasn't ready to be pulled in when you pulled me in, but that was the most important thing to get off my chest. But I do think that we touched on some really important things, and I want to compliment Brianna on touching on the fact that, like, the most important thing, and I think it got ignored, is that the left is so concerned with being right that they don't concern themselves with being effective. And I really wished that there had been more of the panel that was focused on that than pedantry over fucking words. It was a really great point, and it's arguably the most important thing that could have been focused on in this panel.
Luckily, we have a
question.
Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example of the left being ineffective? Because I'm hearing we should be more effective, but except for stopping the crazy Twitter mob and not being mean to Destiny, I need a bit more, like, effectiveness than that.
Look across the United States and look at almost
just real quick. You got some
Yeah,
background
I know. I'm
noise,
turning
dude.
it down. Kid just
Please.
DM'd me. I just turned it way down. I didn't know. Kid just DM'd me. Long story short, you should look across this country and look at non-national elections and see how badly the Republicans absolutely wipe the fucking floor with Democrats across this country. When the further you get away from the national stage, the more you will see that Republicans wipe the fucking floor with Democrats, and there's a reason.
Yeah.
And it consistently prevents Democrats from being able to get ideas from the ground up, because we can't win at local elections and smaller offices. So yeah, the left is not effective.
That's great. That's not what I asked for you to tell me how we should be more effective, and then you told me what is happening, not an actual advice.
Can I give an example of, like, a framework that I feel like I've identified that's problematic?
Please.
I'm very familiar with this because I used to give this framework a lot. I think that the issue is that the left has created a couple of these very bad, like, thought terminating paradigms that make it so that, like, resistance has to be maximized, other you're essentially doing nothing. So there's two really big examples of this. One has to do with the paradox of tolerance. So essentially what we have is, if we want a society that tolerates everybody, well, obviously we can't be tolerant of the intolerant, right? That's true. But the problem is that leaves the window open to label so many people as intolerant that what happens is people view your political advocacy as you're either completely and totally 100% on board, or you're going to side a little bit with the intolerant people. You know, all of the comics that come out where it's like, on one side a person is like, oh, I think that we should help trans people, and on the other side a person's like, we should murder all of them, and the centrist guy is like, I think these both make good points. Everybody's like, that's what a centrist is. You're either binary with us or you're completely and totally against us. I think that the theoretical construction of those types of things, like the paradox of tolerance, leads progressives to these worldview points where you're either 100% with us or you're a fascist, and that makes it impossible to, like, pass or do anything, because people have to be totally 100% bought into your ideology or they're an enemy.
Can I add on to that? Because I really strongly agree with that. I also think a side effect of that is I think it weakens our ability to make intellectual arguments and appeal to the other side. I can tell you, having run for office, if you're not able to go out there and have a conversation with any type of person that disagrees with you and find some common ground and connect with them, you're not going to be able to fundraise, you're not going to be able to canvass. I think this all or nothing thinking makes us much weaker because it makes it so we can only talk to ourselves. I'm not saying you have to agree with the other side. I'm saying you need to understand it and be able to counter those arguments. I think that is a very important, powerful, realpolitik skill to have.
And I think that to build off of that, to reply to Katie, this is the exact framework for what we need. We need to start finding common ground within the disagreements in the left, finding ways to get into spaces organized and work from the ground up, which is what I'm talking about.
And not just the left.
And not just the left, but in
not
general.
Not just the left. We like, I'm sorry to cut you off, but this is a problem we have. We have to reach into conservative and moderate spaces. We have to.
I'm talking, yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, to be clear. I'm referring specifically as a reply to Katie's question. We've got to find common ground amongst the people in the left we disagree with so that we can organize on a local level and build from the ground up. We at the left, we really want to win the presidency, the Senate, and the House, and we don't want to build from the ground up. That is the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, a big. I think an example of this is probably something along the lines of like when I talk to a bunch of people about like pro-choice versus pro-life stuff, a lot of the rhetoric that I end up seeing sort of equates the pro-life angle to be just strictly anti-woman. And then when I talk to people that are like pro-life, like they have like a totally fundamentally different view on what consciousness is, on what the worth of a human life is, and there's so much like religion and stuff like wrapped up into it. But like if you sort of give this nuance into the equation, like there is a conversation that you could end up having between these two sides that just kind of gets stopped once you start equating it all to like, oh, all pro-life stuff is basically just misogyny.
So Katie, yeah, that's why we've all kind of circled around this. A lot of people have answered your question. Do you feel your question's been answered at this point?
Well, I haven't heard any solutions except how to make individual, because the solution, Wick, and President Sunday made a good point by saying that since we're not an organized group, it's really hard to make fractured individuals online do what you want them to do. So we can advocate, and I'm fine with that. Brianna is doing that. Destiny's doing that. You're all doing that. Hopefully it would influence people. I don't do the stuff that you say that progressives do. So I don't have a personal response to that. So, you know, it's just not systemic solutions. Can I quickly say something?
Yeah, go.
Yeah. I know, and I agree that because progressives are the one, and I heard kids say this, and I agree with it a lot, about how because we are the one wanting to change things, we are the ones that have a lot more responsibility to make that amicable, to explain that properly, to convince. Like, we can't just expect people to come to our side just because we think we're right. And I'm paraphrasing, kid. I hope that's okay. And Yeah, and I agree with that. But I also think that when I hear political commentators talk about this, I find it interesting that no one is able to explain the progressive mentality very well. Like kids said they assume malice a lot, and that was like the only attempt at interpretation. I heard progressives are malicious or either very stupid and ineffective. I
I didn't
think
say that progressives are malicious. I said that they're interpreting
they
malicious
assume
intent
malice,
onto other
yes.
people. Yeah.
Yes.
Not that they do that maliciously, but that's just a problem.
I think sometimes where progressives really mess up, and I've personally noticed this with a lot of people I've talked to, especially in school, is they expect people to make jumps that like are kind of unreasonable from like where people are at to like where you want them to be, right? I think like the issue is you have to start like either if you have like an ideology that's like much further left, you probably want to find groups of people that like are more willing to hear that out, right? Or are more willing to work with it. But you can't go into like a rural red community that's been rural red for a really long time and like start insulting them for not like adopting your ideology. You probably want to find steps that they like are reasonable for them to take and try to work on those, right?
Can I interject here? And I say this really respectfully. I think you and I have a very different theory of change, and I think this is very different from what you were saying too, Kit. Because I think your paradigm when it came to life versus abortion right, pro-life, though I think it's anti-abortion. I think your theory of change seems to be we go talk to people, we meet them in the middle, blah blah blah. I think that's sometimes true. I think. Well, sure. Go ahead. Let me finish. So I think in like Destiny brought up an example, some gun rights legislation where it's not bifurcated, it's not all or nothing. Like let's focus on handguns or a lower minimum wage just to get some movement there. That's a really good example in my view about kind of communicating. I do think for some issues it is all or nothing. And I think sometimes in politics, it really is a question of how many people can you get over to your own side. I think sometimes something I've seen a lot on campaigns is you're so focused on beating the other side or responding to the other side that you're not thinking about mobilizing every single voter that you have. Just one important thing here. The big disadvantage that the Democrats, including progressives, have compared to the Republicans is a data deficit. We do not have the same database, the same fundraising email lists, the same associative information to figure out what voters are going to respond to your messages at the same scale and availability that the right does. So I think like sometimes we're so focused on this internet idea of arguing when it needs to be like just organizing and gathering people.
I will just let you know I'm gathering all your data as we speak. It is being routed to my server and it will be used for the causes I deem appropriate, what you can convince me to use it for. Does that answer your question, Katie? Do you feel satisfied or are you still unsatisfied? And just to be clear, before I let you answer, we are cycling people in and out because I want to get through as many people as possible. So that's why Parallax dip. That's all.
I just wanted to quickly finish my point. So yeah, when I was saying about the progressive perspective, I think that I'm not saying that it's good. So maybe when I'm putting up resistance, people are thinking that I'm disagreeing with them, and I'm not. I think these observations are not wrong. I'm just am genuinely asking about. I heard the solutions. I'm just not sure how to enforce those solutions on people that I have no control over, except for trying to socially sanction them.
Well, I think that's all we can do here, right? That's all any of us are advocating for. Nobody's saying we should make a lot of put people in jail or we need to assassinate people in real life.
Well,
we're just talking about social advocacy.
If that's all you're advocating for, we spent a whole lot of time saying the same thing over and over again and advocating for the same thing over and over again while repeating that endlessly. So, okay.
Well, but I mean, that's all we do online, right? That's all Tucker Carlson does. Tucker Carlson isn't a legislator. He's not a lawmaker. He's not passing any laws, right?
Sure, but a lot of people complain that we don't have policy. We didn't talk about policies. That was going to be my main point, but we were busy talking about how Twitter people are bad, which is true. They're bad.
Well, no,
and
hold on.
We should socially sanction them.
It goes hand in hand. The issue wasn't.
Let me finish my point. I beg of you.
You gotta be quick.
Okay.
You gotta be quick.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Brevity is
Sorry.
the soul of wit, please.
I thought we were doing back and forth. Go ahead. Go for it.
So, I'm just saying that while, especially, I agree, young people are bad at not using it in a derogatory way. I think a lot of progressive lenses are looking at outcomes. So if what you're saying will lead to transphobic outcomes, then you might say that's transphobic, and people take offense to that. If it will lead to racist outcomes, you say that's racist, and people take offense to that. So I think there's a miscommunication there in looking at systems versus individuality. And that's just my opinion.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm done with.
Sure thing. So I don't think there's a miscommunication. I think the problem is the outcomes are not binary. There are different levels. Like, people view transphobia as a binary thing. There's absolutely not. There might be a person who, if their own kid was transphobic, they'd kill him, but they would vote in favor of any trans thing because they don't care about it for other people. That's fine. There might be some person who's like fully on board with almost every single trans thing, but they won't date a trans person ever and won't even consider it. And then there might be a person who just wants all trans people removed from society. They don't even believe it's real, right? All of this exists on a spectrum, but progressives have a hard time staking out positions on the spectrum. It's either a binary yes or no. In terms of like policies and how you can discuss like different positions of policies, I gave the example earlier of gun control. Listen, give conservatives silencers with no restriction and give conservatives AR-15s and then regulate pistols, right? That's an example of like a compromise. And then do like red flag laws or close boyfriend loopholes if that's, I think that got closed on the last gun legislation, stuff like that. For abortion, give conservatives outlaw all third trimester abortion in the United States unless it's medically necessary. That's fine. And then make first and second trimester abortion federally legal. I don't know if we would have the support for that, but if you did that, that covers like 98%, 99% of abortions right there. Boom. And that's like, you know, good parts. For minimum wage, push for state minimum wages instead of a federal minimum wage. For healthcare, push for state healthcare. Yeah, those are like policy positions that I think progressives have a really hard time.
But you said yourself, it's not really the progressive side that poses the issues with that. I don't think I think a lot of progressive would take Roe v. Wade back if we can just like not do third trimester abortions. Right?
I don't think so.
Really
I don't agree. Choice. I don't agree. I don't think they would.
Okay.
I think it'd be all or nothing for a lot of them. But that's my perspective, right? Oh, okay.
Okay.
Destiny, earlier you asked the question of like what issues do people have to like? How do you decide what issues you leave behind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think something that some people in this panel even pointed out is that like one of the benefits the left has is that part of its assortment is in like one big unified group. And I think what that allows some people to do is that like you don't really have to leave behind an issue, but like I think people just need to be like reminded you have to be realistic about where you're pushing these issues, like I said earlier, right?
Yeah, but that kind of means like leaving behind, right?
No, because I think you can still push for these issues, but I think one of the problems is like a lot of people want like these extremely really big changes. I did Model UN recently, and I got to witness kind of like the process of how these things work and like how these changes happen much more incrementally. And I think people need to be like, they have to either witness it or like be forced to like understand that like you're not going to get these big changes, right? Just arguing about it online, like shifting the Overton window, like I guess it might make you feel better, but it doesn't get you those changes you want. Right?
But like
if you want those changes, you can push them in like specific areas where you might be able to like help people out where people are already like amenable to your cause, right?
I'm just saying that there's certain like you have political capital to do certain things, and I don't think you can do as much as you want to all the time. So for instance, if you're an immigrant or especially Hispanic, especially coming from Mexico, if you have family or whatever, and you voted for Biden because you wanted to see change in immigration, you probably feel pretty salty right now because I don't think literally anything
I'm a DACA recipient. My family's been here like 20 years. We still haven't done shit,
you have
bro.
like nothing. Like I think they closed down some of the more egregious separation camps and changed a little bit of the policy, but for the most part, like immigration is almost exactly the same.
But it feels like that every time, right? Like immigration is never something that's ever like actually pushed for, but it's something that makes people feel a little bit more safe, right? That's why these people vote for it. And what you could do, like somebody like me, right? I could find areas where like, let's say like arrest rates are like a little bit higher for people who like aren't immigrants or people might be treated a little bit more poorly. You could probably find groups in those areas that are like more willing to sympathize, right? And try to push for those groups like, hey, we might be able to like put in policy. Like in Texas, something I think would be really good is trying to push for parts of Texas to like allow immigrants to get licenses, right? Which is like,
I think they do that in California, but
yeah.
I think the Democratic Party has, there was a term I didn't know until I ran for office, which is called Hispandering. It's the fact that Democrats cannot win without the Hispanic vote, so they just show up last minute and start talking to these groups and promise them the sun and then just forget it until the next election. I think structurally, I think overall, I would give a very high appraisal to the Biden administration in terms of progressive things they've done. I think that we have ignored that particular issue at our peril. And I think I really worry about the future of the Hispanic vote in the United States, because the Republicans are doing things like they built out local community centers for people, Latino people, like Spanish-speaking radio stations, bringing that kind of messaging out, those kind of right-wing talking points. We're just not even thinking about that. It's this kind of structural unwillingness to dream big and get a message out there that is why we continue losing, in my view.
Okay. FK, thanks for coming on. Rezi, what do you think? What's your
I just have
question?
specific things to detract from certain people, as well as using my angle to make Destiny a little worried. I specifically want to start with Katie. Katie, what is a leftist?
Rezi, a leftist?
Yeah, leftist. Like, what would you consider a leftist?
A leftist for Americans is someone who's like a socialist or a communist, right? And you would assume they have progressive values.
So you're saying that like center-left people who are liberal, capitalists such as Destiny aren't leftists then?
Not from my understanding.
Okay. Do you think that like level of purity testing is something that ultimately is very difficult to meet with you, or like to meet with people who hold these views of socialism or communism, or even just, having people who believe in capitalist liberalism who want to make a more fair system?
Okay, so there was a reason I very specifically said progressives, because I am not very... If Destiny said he was a leftist, I didn't ask Destiny if he was a leftist, because as far as I know, he believes in capitalism, right? If you want to tell me a different definition of what a leftist is, and you tell me that it has nothing to do with economics, that's fine. I'll take it. That's just what I learned. So
I think that politics has two parts to it. One of it is social politics, and one of it is economics, right?
I agree.
Do you need to be absolutely perfect on both to be considered a leftist or part of the left coalition, even with the delineation that you've given for America?
Well, no, because I consider myself part of the left, even though I'm not a socialist or a communist, right?
Okay.
So I can be part of the alliance, but I wouldn't call myself I call myself a leftist on accident, but I try to say I'm a progressive because I care about the social issues, not about the
misrepresenting your credentials, I see. Okay, I'm gonna have to make a YouTube about that.
Professor, no!
Yeah,
stop!
so anyways, with the whole you saying that, it's basically, I think that when you're employing like these purity tests, you're ultimately keeping a lot of people that would go ahead and come over to say that, to even go ahead and basically do the no true leftist, no true infighting thing in your closing statement by saying that even Brianna Wu isn't on your side is actually a fundamental issue with the way that you're approaching this.
Okay, then I'm sorry if that came off that way.
Yeah, do you think I'm on your side?
I think that we're all pretty much
on
I'm
asking Katie.
Both sides.
No, she struggled to answer. She's thinking.
See?
So I was told that we were going to be on the same side, you, me, and President Sunday.
Sure.
And then the panel, and that's how I acted on the panel. And then the panel kept grouping me and President Sunday together, you as well. So at the end, in my closing statement, I said me and President Sunday because I wasn't sure what was happening. Sure. And I don't know your content. So.
Respectfully, I realize you're younger, and when you're younger, you think everything is kind of based on you. So I say that respectfully. But
I think that's not respectful. I think that's why you're sending
like I'm not going. Wait, what did she say? I was reading a message. What did she just say?
The question at hand is, when it comes to issues in an aggregate sense, in this, in the idea of who is on what side trying to get things done, do you perceive someone like me? I literally run one of the few progressive super PACs in the United States. We worked with Nina Turner a ton. We were one of the few people that showed up in the Nina Turner race. Like, I have stood up for women's rights in a very serious public way. I've literally run for Congress to try to counter the Trump administration. Do you perceive me as being on your side, or am I not pure enough for your conception of progressive politics?
According to what you said, of course you're on my side, right?
Sure.
I don't know you. I never heard about you before what you just told me, right? I'm too young for that, respectfully.
Sure.
So, yeah. So from what you're saying, you're clearly a progressive.
Yeah.
I don't know if we were on the same side on this panel, but that doesn't really matter. I'm not sure what is the constant gesturing with like the purity testing. Riz, can you explain to me what you mean when I purity test Destiny?
What I mean is that I think you're purity testing everyone, and I want to go ahead and move to my next point, which is actually
No. I need you to explain that to me, because if you're gonna say that I'm doing that,
I think that you're purity
that's
testing
fair.
people. I think that, like,
Can you
again,
explain
have
what that
people- Okay,
means?
what I mean by that is that you are deriding people and their commitment to these issues, right? With the way you talk, the way you're going ahead and separating and otherizing yourself from them as well. I think that that's what I mean by purity testing.
Okay, so when I asked Destiny if he's a progressive, that was me purity testing him, even though he said he's a progressive, and then I accepted that, and then the entire panel, I treated him as a progressive.
I mean, I specifically was referring to your closing statement, but go ahead, go off, Queen.
Oh, okay. So I guess everything else
anyways,
I said doesn't
I actually
matter.
wanted to go ahead
All
and
good.
buffer you up a little bit here with a criticism of now Brianna. I'm lumping you in with Jenny. Why did you, Brianna? Why did you bring up her age? Right? Like, the thing is, it's like, feel that like you're going ahead and otherizing her based on her age, and Jenny, quite the same with the tone that you're taking, right? Like, this is the same like leftist infighting, the same consumptive, disease that goes in and plagues this level of politics. I think that, maybe if we were in a bloody sports part of this, but I think we're trying to actually get to points where we can understand one another, and my cat doesn't block the camera. He needs to lick his balls, sorry.
I think that's a fair criticism.
I think that honestly, like, that was like
for 2 hours to just
yeah.
smile, and I guess my patience failed in that moment, so I apologize.
Yeah, and that's
I'm neither
but
a
Jenny,
leftist
why
or a
did
progressive.
you not even give a moment of that? And I think that that's honestly characteristic.
Because I'm not a
of
leftist or a progressive.
Okay.
It's not infighting when I do it. I don't care about what you guys do. Okay?
Agreed.
Okay, so you can just be an asshole to people just because.
Do you think that's what not being a progressive is?
Well,
Is
no, I
being
just
an
think that's
asshole?
what being an asshole is.
Well,
Okay.
Rezi, thank you for coming.
I'm not done. I have one more.
Quickly,
Hey.
briefly. to
Destiny, when you go ahead and talk about third trimester abortions, how do you respond to doctors that are unwilling to perform abortions because they're not sure when it's medically necessary? That ultimately makes the argument to go ahead and have these abortions be even open up until the end of the third trimester.
Usually medical decisions are made under a doctor's discretion. If they can't, then you get a consult. If the problem is a moral one, this is really mean, but pick a different job. It's not
I guess, it's
yeah.
more the question of doctors that are afraid of losing their jobs because of state bodies trying to regulate them. And that's actually something that we've seen crop up in Texas and Indiana.
Well, I mean, my answer is going to be boring and obvious, right? I wouldn't support like attacking doctor jobs for performing medically necessary abortions, right? You would hope there'd be some kind of like statutory protection or some sort of like licensing protection for people that are performing surgery where it may or may not be on the line, right? I think if we can protect cops that shoot and kill innocent people, we should be able to protect hospitals and doctors that might perform an abortion that maybe wasn't 100% medically necessary, or maybe upon review it wasn't, but yeah. The only reason why I focus on the abortion thing is because like those third trimester abortions are such insane edge cases, and it feels like we all want to like fight and die on the hill of third trimester abortions when it's such a rare procedure that really nobody likes. Like even the most evil abortion having woman in the world is going to have a hard time terminating a third trimester pregnancy. Like the dude's like kicking around you at that point. That's a rough one. But yeah.
But it happens in that instance most of the time because someone has like a catastrophic birth defect.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be giving birth to someone that's going to need care for the rest of their life. I mean, look, I think I've expressed on this panel, I am generally a person for compromise and getting what we can. I just have to tell you, if you're saying, look, you're going to have to care for a child for the rest of their life, and they're not even going to be able to respond to you, and you're going to become a full-time nurse, and that's going to be your life from now on. That's a real personal cost, and I feel like that's not present in the discussion a lot of the time.
Did your question get answered, Rezi?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for answering my questions. You've been lovely, kid. You're super hot. I'll talk to you all soon.
Be safe.
Wow.
Nice. You're up.
Hi. Yeah, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel now. Yeah, so Brianna, you said
fucking
you said yeah, damn straight. All right, we deserve rights too. Okay. So the you mentioned something about the young radical people being like kind of part of the problems you identified when it comes to actual activism on the ground, and Destiny seemed to agree with that. Do you agree that they push like the worst elements of the online discourse as well, or is that a separate problem?
No, I want to be really clear, and I genuinely apologize if I wasn't clear about this. The volunteers I have worked with in my career, which is plenty of democratic elections at this point, generally speaking, you're there to work. If you're getting paid, you're really, really there to work. And you kind of tend to focus on just the job you've got to get done rather than what your individual beliefs are, because it's really more like who can cut more canvas for the day, who can get through more of their phone call sheet. It's not really about what you want, it's about what the candidate needs.
So I guess we're talking more about when the opinions become relevant to what they're doing on the ground, like they're participating in...
Can you give an example of that?
Sure, like meetings where... Yeah, like participating in like town halls or whatever, where they stand up and give like very progressive takes, things like that.
Dude, I gotta tell you, I would pay anything to get more college students and high school students out to your local DTC to participate, because it is so old. Like, respectfully, you gotta show up if you want to take over this party, and I do. You know, you've got to show up, and that means running for local, like, terrible positions like treasurer or vice chair, and it means like working elections. So I'm begging people. Yes.
Sure, but if we're identifying this group as, you know, again, you guys seem to agree, the group that is causing some of these like weirder, out of left field radical positions, you know, some of the more aggressive, progressive positions. You're also advocating for them, like standing up and being the ones, you know, at these town halls, potentially getting this kind of media attention for these like more fringe views. Are you fine with that?
Yeah, well, this is genuinely how I feel. Yeah, I think if you look at my public presence today and the way I conduct myself versus during, you know, Gamergate, right? I think you see someone that's a lot more calm and measured, right? And thoughtful about how I advocate, right? That's not an accident. That is from spending so much of the last few years having to talk to people I don't agree with and trying to build things with people. That was a very useful thing. So it's my view that if you get people off the computer and get them out there to like try to work with people to accomplish things, it's not that I think it's going to de-radicalize them. It's that I think it's going to give them a deeper perspective on how to get along with others and work towards common goals. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, but I might be missing something crazy here, but I feel like you were very strong on like the whole Hogwarts legacy thing, and I feel like that's one of the bigger like online backfires when it comes to progressive discourse, right? Like that clearly hasn't gone particularly well.
I feel like I talked about Hogwarts Legacy for 2 hours. I think I probably should have been more judicious in my public statements. I am not convinced that this battle is a net loss. I think the right has pushed a lot of social issues over the years and fought losing battles and has ended up with some power. And I think sometimes just showing up and fighting an enemy, even if you lose, has value, in my view.
Okay, but I mean, you showed up and fought, or rather the overall progressive group on that issue showed up and fought an enemy that I don't really know I agree exists and probably wasn't worth the political capital, right, in expending all of that effort online, and then the conservative backlash, and now, you know, a bunch of free marketing for a game. Even if you did believe that the game itself had some problems, it seems like that backlash has been counterproductive and just given the conservatives an easy W, right?
So maybe the different... do you mind if I ask, are you a game developer? Have you worked as a game developer?
No.
Okay, so I have.
I have a real job.
Game development is a very, very, very hard job.
I know. Go ahead.
So one of my goals with this is I think it is helpful to drive the social cost up for the game developers that choose to work at WB, to make that a studio that people are embarrassed to work at, and this to be an IP that they're embarrassed to work on. I can tell you for a fact, because I am, I still am pretty connected to the game industry. We're having real conversations about, is it ethical to work there? And I think when there is a sequel, I do think staffing is going to be a challenge. And I think the only way they're going to be able to staff it is by really making some compromises in the way Harry Potter is engaged with. So look, I fully posit with you, it's very possible we could have lost this battle entirely. It's not my ideal framing. This is a battle that J.K. Rowling wanted to fight, not me. But I am not convinced they're not going to be benefits. Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to get too deep into this.
I don't want to like loop on this forever and ever.
Sure. It's fine. I did have one more question, which is there's been a lot of conversation about purity testing, and I think maybe this is more for Destiny actually. It seems like you just end up with the same problem in the opposite direction, where instead of, purity testing for, you're not left enough, now we have to start excising groups of the left that are too radical or are using the wrong language or continuing to push more radical. Hell, I would like it if there were fewer people bitching about the Hogwarts Legacy shit, right? So if it were up to me, I would be saying those are the people that we should be ignoring, and the true left is over here, where with the more reasonable, more inclusive takes that aren't saying, that Hogwarts Legacy is a character test, right? We're not excluding people based on whether they play a fucking video game or not. So how do we excise that group of leftists compared to, the existing gatekeeping that's already happening here? It feels like the same problem in the opposite direction.
Okay. If you have an answer, but...
Was that a question for me or Brianna?
Either one.
Probably you.
Well, I mean... I feel like I'm going to repeat the same thing I said earlier. Like, I think that we try to find what the most reasonable positions are, and then you kind of bully people out for positions that you consider unreasonable, right? So like I disagreed obviously with the Hogwarts thing. So my advocacy is just going to say, like, if you want to play that game, it's fine. It doesn't matter. I generally stand against J.K. Rowling's statements on trans people, but I don't think that means that we have to boycott every single thing that's related to her or Harry Potter whatsoever. But yeah, that's all I can do is publicly advocate for my position, right?
Okay, so we just gatekeep in the opposite direction.
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask you a follow-up on that?
Me or him?
You.
Yeah, go for it.
So if that's true, do you see the people who wanted to do the Hogwarts Legacy boycott as the real progressives, or the progressives who were quiet and didn't talk about it because they couldn't give less of a fuck?
Well, I think they're probably all progressives, right? Progressives can disagree on things, right?
But when you talk about progressives, you're talking about the boycott people.
Sure, in that case I was, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Don't you think that's a bit too general?
What's too general?
Do you think the boycott people are like a big enough of a force to be like a representation of progressives, that we're in a panel talking about progressives, those should be the ones that we focus on as like a representation?
I imagine even in progressive movements, we're probably pretty cut on the Hogwarts Legacy stuff, right? I have to say that it's like a barometer for the left, but like even in Vosh's subreddit, there was like a lot of fighting on whether or not like we should ever boycott the Hogwarts Legacy thing. A lot of people are going back and forth on it.
Which he was against, right?
Who was against? Vosh?
He was against boycotting.
I don't know what his positions are. It depends on whoever he's sucking up to at the time.
I can tell you.
Sure. I'm just saying that, like, in general, I think that a lot of progressives were wrestling over whether or not that should be boycotted. I don't think that was like a bog standard, like, progressive position, right?
But that's kind of like the good infighting, right? Or is that the left eating itself?
I don't think infighting is bad. My issue with infighting is when people...
Wasn't that one of the major critiques?
What?
Yeah, but
there was a shitload of leftist infighting, like.
Yeah. So I said verbatim that some infighting is probably good. And I also said verbatim that gatekeeping is good. Right? There's nothing wrong with disagreeing and fighting with people inside your movement. I think that's perfectly fine and healthy and as a part of any movement. The problem is when it gets so extreme that you are excising people based on minutia of ideological differences. So for instance, like...
Yeah, but what determines what a minutia is basically your personal opinion, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not going to be able to... I can't define all of that, right? But I extended you the same courtesy earlier where I get... Hold on. I extended you the same courtesy earlier because somebody was asking you, I think, this exact question that you're now asking me. Somebody was asking you, it might have been Wick, Katie, how do you decide exactly like which people to cut out of the movement? And then that's when I gave the example of like, well, if a person is like, I don't like trans people or I don't want them to be anywhere involved or whatever, they're not allowed to, be in the movement. That's probably not a progressive. But I can't give you the exact cutoff point. I can just say, like, broadly speaking, like, these are the positions I think we should adopt to push forward a broad progressive policy that we do all agree on.
Well,
and there's going to be disagreement in there.
I was actually going to answer your question about what should we leave behind and what should we not. And I think that's different than talking about the minutia thing. And when you say like progressives are handling like stuff that aren't important, I think you decide what's important, what's not important. So that's not a very good definition, I guess.
Here's what I think is important that almost all progressives, I would almost say that this is probably a defining progressive belief, is you should believe in some broad form of trans advocacy and trans protection. So that means some sort of access to medical care that's not treated as simply cosmetic or elective. And it probably should extend, it gets a little bit more, but probably should extend to minors as well. At the very least, we should be able to agree that if a doctor and a parent agree, that minors should have access to that treatment as well in a way that's medically necessary, not cosmetic or elective, right? So that would be like a progressive idea. Now, where we're gonna fight over is exactly how do we advocate for or push that. So let's say that I come out and I go, okay, the trans minor shit right now is just fucked. It's not electorally tenable. I think that what we push is to codify some trans stuff for adults, and then maybe from there we'll move like later. Now, if somebody comes out and they disagree like Destiny, that's stupid. If we don't fight for trans children now, it's never gonna happen. That's okay infighting. That's totally fine, and that's a good type of infighting. Those are the discussions we should have. But if somebody comes out and they say, Destiny, you hate trans people, get the out of here, you transphobic piece of shit. That's not okay infighting, because we have the same end goals. We just disagree on the process, but now we're going to excise people based on the disagreements in the process. That's like the difference in my mind between bad infighting and good infighting.
Okay, so it's just about the type of talk that you use and how you choose to engage in the conversation rather
No,
like...
not at all. It's not to do with the type of talk or how you engage with the conversation. It has to do with like whether you can have a like, here's a problem with a lot of progressives. There can be no room for disagreement on the process at all. You have to be 100% on board with it, or MLK is getting dragged out again, and his letter for Birmingham is being thrown in your face. President Sunday did it to me in this conversation. You're the white, I think he mentioned that thing, you're the white moderate, we would have never gotten civil rights, right? It's not just being nice people. You can even be mean about infighting, but it's when you start saying, like, we need to kick this person out of the movement. That person's not a true progressive. Get that person out of here. I think that's where the problems happen. If that makes sense.
Okay, that's just a
but the exact same thing happens.
What I meant.
The exact same things happens if we're cutting out those people based on them being too radical on the left. Like one of the issues we have is that... Hold on. No, well, I mean, they would be, right? Like if you're bullying them out, if you're gatekeeping them out.
Leftists.
Okay, so wait, hold on. So if we're including the, let's say, okay, right. The issue we have is that the conservatives will magnify anything that the broad left does, even down to like a single fucking TikTok. So we do have to exclude certain elements of like more radical leftist ideas, or maybe that, you know, they're not included in like the broad leftist group yet, because they will get magnified and attributed to the whole of the left. This is one of the big things that happens to leftism. They will take a tiny thing down to a single TikTok, and they will apply it and say, this is what the whole left believes. This is what they're all advocating for. This is all what they're all fighting for. So how do you hold that standard across the whole community without excising people who think they should be part of the movement, but they're too radical, and they end up being, you know, essentially used as fodder in the culture war?
So I could be wrong, and I don't know how I would even begin to quantify this, and I know I stand in the face of a lot of people that disagree. I don't think that actually happens. I think that there's a popular...
Wow, really?
Yes. I think there's a popular thought that what happens is conservatives will take a very minor pet issue and they'll magnify it to make it way bigger than it actually is. I think what actually happens is conservatives identify something that is a minor position. I'll use this example. My 2-year-old child is trans, okay? The amount of people that actually say that, this is probably like 4 on the planet that are actually coming out and saying so. It's very, very, very rare. It's not a real issue, right? The problem isn't conservatives picking that out and making it an issue. I think what makes it an issue is when conservatives pick that out and they start to fight over it, a lot of people will try to defend it. And I think that if the majority of the people were like, you know, if somebody comes up to me and they're like, do you think 2-year-olds are trans kids just like 16-year-olds to me? I'd be like, no, that's probably dumb. And they don't really have anything to fight over with that. And they kind of like have to abandon it, because if they start to harp on that issue and there's nobody that they can target, there's no group of people willing to defend it, I think you start to look a little bit crazy, in my opinion.
It's excising them then, right? So then we are completely cutting them out at that point, right? We're saying we're not going to defend this. We essentially you're asking for the left to disavow that behavior, so they get cut out of the left. Okay, all right.
I don't know about disavow, but I'm just saying, like, you pick your battles. Like I don't think that drag is inherently sexual, and I think you could probably even do drag shows for kids. It's like fun and cute or whatever, and it's probably okay. But I'm not going to defend it on public. It's just not worth it. It's such a huge loss right now in terms of everything going on. I would say, like, fuck defending that. Maybe in the future we'll look at it, but right now it's just not worth fighting that battle, because it's such a minutia thing. And why would you stake so much of the reputation of all the progress you're making with trans people on like drag shows? It's just, I don't think it's worth it. For drag shows,
I think one of the sorry, but I think one of the reasons here is there's there's a kind of contagion theory that goes on where conservatives will lock down something as like terrible. I mean, they've done this historically with satanic. Today, they're kind of doing it with grooming stuff. They'll say this thing is grooming, and then the things associated with it will start to become associated with things that are already locked down as grooming, and it ends up with this chain reaction where they end up calling. I mean, this happened with Balenciaga. This happens with like shit every other week on Twitter. You end up with conservatives just saying that something is part of like the overall grooming agenda of the left, because that stuff wasn't defended. And at some point, like, there is a line where that starts to touch things that actually matter. So where do we hold that line? Is it just...
I just want to respond super quick, and then
queens,
Brianna,
yeah,
Brianna,
sure.
okay? Because okay, I think the Balenciaga thing is a great example. Everybody was creeped out by the Balenciaga thing, and nobody was willing to defend it. I think the right wanted to peg that on, like, the left, but, like, nobody wanted to defend that, and it got dropped in, like, 3 days.
Actually.
What?
I defended it.
Oh, okay. You might have defended it, but I think broadly
Yeah.
speaking, I think people didn't defend it, and I think it got dropped out of the news cycle in what, like 3 or 4 days. Like, and even Kanye, like everybody's talking about that, and then it like disappeared pretty fast, I think. But it was because nobody wanted to defend that, I think.
I mean, I continue to see conspiracy theories saying that, you know, people wearing Balenciaga stuff has, you know, pedophilic connotations, right? So I don't know if that really dropped out of the conservative side of the discourse. It just stopped being defended because the next thing that they would call grooming happened. Sorry, Brianna, you were going to say something.
No. Strong point. Everything you said, dead on. I completely agree with it. You too, Destiny. You're completely right. That's where the central thing is. I just want to draw your attention to something that I think this.
Wait, how can we both be right? I thought we disagreed.
I think you're making strong points about the difference here and the conflict that's at play here. I want for you to notice the framing of what you're talking about, because this is so damned important. You're talking, and Destiny is talking about us responding to basically a controversy that the right is ginned up. Now, I am old enough to know they've been doing this since the 80s, the 90s, the nils, and they're doing it today, and they're much better at this with social media. I think one of the reasons I've kind of decided to, you know, with Destiny, with you put my differences aside, is I think you are doing some important work with setting the topic for the left. And I think we don't have that same kind of apparatus out there saying this is what you should be paying attention to. Not drag shows. Let's talk about what's happening with trans kids across the nation. You know, we need our own media ecosystem, because I agree with you. It's a losing battle no matter what side you pick on that, and it's always going to be a losing battle. We are going to have to go on the offense as a left. And I think
billions of dollars to set the discourse, I think, right? Like it's not accessible to us.
Correct. So, and respectfully, Destiny, one of the things I really wish you could do is to put more of your differences aside and work with more people. Jank is awesome. Jank is 10 out of 10. Sam Cedar is awesome. Like, maybe you don't like some of these figures here, but I think there's so much opportunity for you to set a dialogue, because the culture on the left, it's not being set by CNN. It's being set on Twitch and YouTube and Reddit.
Rely on Destiny.
I think you have a really outsized role to play. I think there's good work you could do if you would work with others more.
To be clear, I agree. I work with anybody all the time. Okay, usually it's them that don't want to work with me. But yeah, like I had a conversation with my good cum bucket guzzling friend Sam Cedar. That was a fun conversation. But no, like I'll have a conversation with these guys anytime. And like I said, I agree.
That was
I think
a good
like,
debate, and you kicked his ass. And I subscribed to his show, but
nice.
You really destroyed him.
Okay, yeah, it was a rough conversation, but like, no, I'll work with anybody. I agree. Like,
Sure.
I think it's like the funniest and craziest thing to me is that like Vosh, Hassan, and Destiny, I think we're still the largest streamers for left-leaning politics. I don't know how big Denim's famously has gotten, but the fact that none of us can work together at all is like insane because like everybody fucking hates each other. It's the craziest fucking thing in the world.
It's sad.
Can I interject here, if I may? Getting people that were more left to come on the show with Destiny was a struggle. I reached out to so many people who just turned me. Oh, Destiny's gone. I can't do it. I can't do it.
I talked to a famous video game streamer friend of mine today, and I was talking to her like I'm debating Destiny later today, and she just went white because I was talking to her.
You are like the boogeyman to some people, but no, I think that
Ghost of Twitch.
It's this inability to if I can't be in the same room as someone else without being getting secondary sanctioned like because of something Destiny did, not even something I did or said, but because I'm in the same room as something someone else did or said, and I didn't punch them in the face or call them a Nazi, and I can get those sanctions, that's a fucking problem. Smug, did you get your issue addressed? Did you have...
Yes, ice me, send me out, kill me, do it!
To the void. Okay, Ginger, you've waited patiently and a long time.
Real quick.
Real
quick. Yeah, I'm going to pop off.
Thank you for being here.
You know, say goodbye. Brianna, thank you for the good faith. Super cool talking to you. Destiny, good talking to you too. Katie.
Ooh.
Jenny.
Uh-oh.
It was good.
I would go
good to
better.
see you too. You're real based. All right, have a good one, guys.
Can I just say, I think it's really funny that for the most part, I don't think Katie's been mean to anybody, and she's just getting shit on by everybody in this conversation. I think that's very fucking funny. Sorry.
I probably gotta go as well. It's like 2 a.m. here. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
See you
Thank
guys.
you for
Have fun, be
being
careful.
here.
Bye.
Wow, I really know how to clear a room, don't I?
Nice job.
Hey, Ginger, do you mind if I quickly ask Destiny a question before you go?
Oh,
Go ahead.
Please don't.
Uh-oh.
Please don't.
We have a large room, and I want to get as through it as much as possible. Like you've had
That's great.
3
Yeah,
hours.
you've had a lot.
Had 3 hours. To talk. But if
Go ahead, Ginger.
please.
So I wanna touch back on a topic that Destiny brought up, which is picking and choosing our battles. The problem with most progressives is the fact that they want to jump on everything that bothers them, even if it's a minute issue. They have to bring it up. They have to make a case about it. And although yes, the right does that in their own way, the problem with progressives is I'll bring it to Keffels. She decided to have her own way about things. She decided to go about things the way that she did, getting Destiny canceled, going on Twitter and deciding to pick a fight with anybody that she possibly could. She did this to herself so much that she ended up breaking down on stream because of it. She was holding herself to such a high standard and having everybody else hold her to such a high standard as far as progressives are concerned, that when she decided to open up and be like, oh, well, I kind of like this and I kind of like that, her chat turned on her. And that's the problem that we're facing over and over again, is that you need to choose your own battles and choose them wisely. Because if you're going to nag at everybody for the tiniest things, when there's a big issue, nobody's going to want to pay attention to you.
Okay.
I agree.
I think I largely agree.
Was there a question? Like, hurrah! I agree. Yeah. Do you have a question there?
Well, actually, my question was for somebody that already left.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Wait, was it for President Monday or?
Yes.
Damn. Wait, what was your question for him?
Yeah,
well,
I can be a stand-in. Ask your question. I will put on my Sunday dress and I will answer your question. Go ahead.
Well, my issue with him is the fact that he likes to jump onto these panels, and he knows what these panels are about. And he gets to speak his own mind, but as soon as somebody else steps in and decides to, hey, that's kind of wrong and this is how I feel about it, he gets super emotional about it and storms off, and then gets frustrated when people talk to him about it and ask him not to do that.
Madam, I would just like you to listen for a minute indubitably. That is just not true. You are misrepresenting me, and I will see you in Twitter court. So there you go. Okay.
I did not run. I did not run.
Okay.
I did.
Thanks. No problem.
Thank you so much for having me.
More. We're gonna have two more callers jump in. They'll jump in at the same time though, and then we'll call it quits.
That's great. So Destiny,
nice talking to you guys.
You're a progressive, right? And you care about effective activism.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think you generally care about that more than like your money or content or revenue?
I mean, like I balance the two for sure, but I mean, I generally
Okay.
try to point my way I try to balance the two. We'll say that.
Okay. Because earlier you gave a critique about how leftists are not willing to make those financial concessions for their causes, or
Yeah.
progressives. Sorry.
Yes.
So if a lot of people thought it would be very effective for progressive for you to Vosh to work together again, would you maybe try to make peace with him.
Yeah,
in a way that isn't content driven.
It's always with those people. I have no problem working with anybody. I don't hold grudges for almost anybody. Yeah, it's always on their end that they don't ever want to do.
But you know that's not what I'm saying. Like, you know Vosh has issues with you, and in your manifesto you basically you talk a lot about despising him, and to be fair, he says the same about you. But if you cared about activism, you could try to make actual peace. I just think you more care about the content you can generate from the feud, right? Like, honestly.
Wait, no. The maximizing of content would be working with him. Our duo debates did really well. Bringing him onto these like fresh and fit shows would be huge viewership. Even debating him with things would be huge viewership. And also I make him a better person because he doesn't have anybody to copy takes off of now, and he's like getting lost in a lot of shit. So no, I think like we synergize with each other and work really well. Me and Hassan debating would make like really good content. From a content point of view, it makes more sense for us to work together even. So no, but that's just
so do you think they are the issue with not working with you?
Yeah, of course. Well, of course, I would say that too, but his excuse is going to be that.
Can I ask directly? Destiny, what? If I set up a debate between you and Vosh, you'd come?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, excellent. Vosh, the ball's in your court.
Well, it's been in his court for like 2 years. But his argument is that
let me ask you this. So let's say it's 2024, right? We've got an election to win. Let's say it's Joe Biden again. He's our nominee. Yeah, DGG tried to recruit me to go down to Georgia. I couldn't say yes because, PACs obviously cannot coordinate with political campaigns. But if I could find a way to, get it so outreach to say Majority Report or Young Turks, and then everyone like Destiny, DGG, Young Turks, Majority Report, we're getting every streamer to put together people to go canvas together for 2024. Would you be willing to give a project like that your thumbs up?
I would tentatively say yes. We considered this before because there's actually a group of Vosh people that wanted to come in and canvas and work with us. If I say no, it's not going to be because of ideological disagreements. If I said no, it would just be because having multiple fan bases trying to come together under the same event might lead to some bad leadership clusterfucky problems.
I could see that. Maybe we could.
I wouldn't care if wanted to cut up Georgia and we should all go to Georgia to canvas. I'd have my people, they'd have their people, and the other group of people would have their people. And if we've got canvassers that are closer, let's say that we go to Columbus and they go to Savannah or some other place in Georgia, Atlanta or whatever. We could send canvassers to other people's groups. That'd be totally fine. But the
you could also split it up, figure out a different swing state. So DGG goes down to X swing state. We get Vosh to go over to a Y swing state. So there's no I just think that's the kind of I think that kind of leadership from the top. I think it's modeling what you want to see in the world.
For sure.
I think it's sending a message to the Democratic Party because something I don't. Look, let's be clear. The House of Representatives, they're probably not calling DGG saying, "Hey, can you bring me out some volunteers here?" If you can raise your profile as someone that can deliver volunteers for people, that gives you real world power, right? It gives the progressive movement power. It says that, look, young people are not just here to bitch on Twitter. You're here to get some stuff done. I think that would be, I think it'd be a really good moment for all of us to feel good about going and building something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Together.
Like I said, between the three of us, I know we could fill over 5,000 canvassers. This is not even a question. And we could put them almost anywhere in the country too. And we can get them really, really, really driven. I think in one weekend, my canvassing crew in Georgia knocked 10% of the doors in the state that had been knocked for that entire campaign. And that was just with my fan base. Hassan could probably mobilize 5 times more people.
Right.
But it's just hard.
And think about the media that would get too, right? I mean, it would be, I think there are ways to get out positive messages on this that we're just not thinking about because there's not leadership at the top, in my view.
I agree. We have to build the bridge, though. That's the first step, is building this bridge so that we can work together instead of working apart. I think that's an absolutely great point. And you know what? Content-wise, that would be awesome. Destiny, Vosh, and Hassan, right? Raising money for a trans charity all together in a debate where all the money goes to a trans charity. Excellent. But we have some, we're going to close it out after these 3 individuals get their say, get their questions answered. These are the last 3. Sorry, gang. We'll start with Tuna, please.
Hey, what's going on? So this is a broad question, but maybe it's more specific towards Destiny because you kind of reminded me specifically of this while you were saying something. So earlier, and in general, people have been saying that the left has a gatekeeping issue. Everyone's kind of talking about this idea that there's this, general left and that people are, purity testing, doing all this. I agree in the sense that people will say, we are the real left and you are the fake, and that's like fighting over the claim to the word. But it feels like a lot of this like so-called gatekeeping is more so just like necessary separation. I don't think that progressivism is a single movement right now. I think that we just have like oil and vinegar that needs to separate. Do we have to think of it that way? Or like, it seems like this is growing pains, right? Or am I the only one seeing that?
No, I think that there are things that progressives could bring way more people in on. They could be way bigger tent on some stuff. But they get too much into the weeds on things, and it inhibits their ability to build a larger coalition of voters. I think for the most part, it truly is either a race to moderate or a race to mobilize your side, rather than like getting more and more purity tested. There's a reason why like there's a reason why we had to like bow so much to like Cinema and Manchin, and it's because those are like the only types of candidates that could hold those seats, right? We're not going to be, towing the line for AOC because she could be, no offense, but she could be replaced with any other Democrat. Like a rock with painted blue would win in her district. So yeah, I understand again, and I agreed with Katie here a little bit that like you have to cut out some people, obviously, right? Like if you're against like gay marriage, you can't be a progressive, But if you have like questions about and being uncomfortable about like sex reassignment surgery for minors, that's a totally fair position to have and still be like fully on board with progressivism, like 100% of the way. I just think we have to be careful like where we cut people out.
I think it would behoove all of us to think about goals that unite people. Like, for instance, with transgender people, I think if the message were similar to like gay marriage, it was, let's make sure trans kids have access to public schools, right? Let's make that a right nationwide. That's a more unifying message that you can bring people behind. I think one of the problems is progressives, there's a real tendency for us to pick the most divisive message possible. Look at police violence. What was our message there? Defund the police. I'm very amenable to police reform, but this is the worst slogan in the history of slogans, right? So there's something about us where we just take glee in taking the most extreme position and trying to get people to refute that, right? And that, I would argue, is something that's it's about you feeling good in that moment, but it's not anything that's going to build political power, in my view.
Cool. Anything else, Tina?
Yeah, I mean, when talking about goals, and this is the other problem, this is what I've seen and I think is the main problem on the left, is that the left kind of switched towards doing an aesthetic politics instead of a principle-based politics. I just don't, when we're talking about the idea that because we have the same goals in mind, that means that we must be on the same side, that's kind of indicative of the problem that I'm seeing, is like, I don't see the left talk enough about shared principles, shared means of getting to a place. We all kind of agree, yeah, on ends, but if we're going to be talking about, if we're going to be talking and winning in politics, I feel like principle has been the reason, even though they're not good principles, I think that's the reason that the right has been doing a lot better at growing than the left has. Why are we focusing so much on saying this is where we're going to go, instead of saying, and the Democratic Party does a lot better at this than the quote unquote progressives do, saying this is how we're going to get there.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. When I think of like, if I think of a leftist extremist in the United States, like you've got to be on board with a ton of social policy. You've got to be on board with almost socialist communist stuff. You have to be anti-establishment in a lot of different ways. You have to hate the current political party, the Democrats. And then when I think of the radicals on the right, which are Trump fans, you have to think that like Trump memes really well and owns the left. And like, that's kind of it. And there's like a really big tent to how big like Trump, that I would consider Trump, personally, I would consider Trump to be a fascist. I think Trump is very, 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 very radical. And he was able to grow a huge base because like, I think so many different people could get on board with that. They didn't purity test the because like, if you really think about it historically, Trump's not even really a Republican. He's not really. Like he's had all sorts of crazy positions in the past. He's kind of said whatever the he's at the Clinton's wedding and shit. But because he like memed on the left well and people thought that was funny, that was like enough for him to grow like a massive voter base. And it's so much harder on the left for us to like deal with that.
I agree. I also think it's true. The right doesn't ask you to spend a lot of time being bad. When I think about when I first started developing my consciousness on the left, you have to learn to feel really bad about this and that, and the amount of stuff you have to worry about and think about and feel awful about and question yourself on the progressive side is a very, very long list. And I'm not saying it's not worthwhile, but I'm just saying there's a higher mental load, and you're asking people to examine and feel negative about what they're doing. When I think about the Republican Party at their most simplest message, it's fucking Top Gun, right? Like, it's the military and a dude just out there with a cowboy hat on, right? It's a feel-good message. I think that it would really behoove us more on the left and the progressive side to talk more in positive terms about what we want to build and who we want to be. Like this idea that you could be free from your healthcare being tied to your job, right? That's a really freeing, positive thing for us to strive for. So I think we need to, I think we focus so much on the purity sometimes, their messaging is universally negative.
Who was the bald guy that ran, bald black dude that ran in 2016? Democrats.
Yeah, what was his from? Was he
Herman
No. On the Democrat side.
Democrat side. He was a Booker? Cory Booker?
Was it Cory Booker?
Yeah, Cory Booker.
Yeah,
he
Cory
said
Booker,
something
right?
that was so good. I haven't thought about this much before, but Brianna brings up a really good point that synergizes with what he says. Is it feels like on the left, it's gonna sound like a meme, but it truly does feel this way. It feels like a lot of people on the left hate this country. They hate the United States, and it really does feel like they want to teach you that we killed Pocahontas and we hate slaves and we are all these horrible things, America. And Cory Booker said something really interesting in an interview, or not an interview, when he was on stage, and that was that the Democratic Party needs to stop attacking rich people because it feels like Democrats hate success, and it really kind of does feel that way. Like when I go to Republicans, they want you to be like business owners, they want you to have guns to protect yourself, they love their country. And like on the left, it's like, okay, well, hold on, you're white, you don't even get a voice, okay? And then secondly, like this country was built on slavery and imperialism and colonialism, and we have done all these horrible things, and America's one of the most racist countries on earth. And it's like, Jesus Christ, it's like, it's demeaning. It's like, holy I feel kind of like shit at the end of the day when I look at, when I get like, woken up on like, so here's feminism, and this is why 98% of men are rapists, even if they don't know. It's like, damn, it is a big ask, and it feels like there's not much sometimes to celebrate on the left, and like you can't be patriotic and you can't celebrate like any financial success. Like, yeah, I don't know what the change is to that, but that is a point. I think that we like, damn, we're down on ourselves a lot over here. Holy shit.
I'm tired of tweeting something and like being told by someone who's 20 that America is like a racist imperial country. I know that. I'm old enough to understand that, but I'm also seasoned enough to have a longer view, to know this country is not just about the mistakes we've made. We've done some really awesome things as a country, things we should be really, really proud of. We've shown leadership around the world. What Blinken is doing right now at the State Department is really, really awesome if you pay attention to that. We've shown amazing leadership on Ukraine. And you've got this class of children where their only message is America equals bad and evil in all circumstances. There's a huge mental load to that.
The United States, just if I may jump in briefly, the United States is one of the least racist countries in the world. It just is. It's one of the least racist countries in the world. It's one of the least problematic countries in this world. And we are hypercritical of it. Criticism of America, A-okay. But when you're hypercritical and you refuse to see any of the good,
Correct.
I'm losing my words. It's late for me, guys. Okay, Double, please go ahead. What do you got?
Yeah, so I guess I just had like a question about the value of more like extreme or
hold on,
radical
wait.
positions.
Go do your question. Katie, your country over there is literally killing half the people living there. You can't laugh at us, okay? You motherfucker. You guys are so racist. You even hate dark-colored Jews, okay? So don't even with me, Miss Israeli. Sorry, double shine. Double shine.
If
Go do your thing.
heard what I said online, I would literally be taken away by citizenship.
Good. I'm glad. I hope Netanyahu himself kills in a video game. Okay.
Destiny.
Sorry.
Send me a jet over here because they're gonna murder my ass because I'm a bad Jew.
Chill. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, double shine. Say what you're gonna say.
Well, I feel bad because Wick will never let me on the show again if I just cut a conversation about Israel. So if you want to go at that,
no, we're not.
It wasn't a conversation. Destiny was being funny.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so my question was about the value of more like extreme or radical positions among the progressive movement. Earlier, Destiny, you were talking about $15 minimum wage and how that was pretty much untenable, but $12 was something that could have seen,
maybe I think,
policy.
but it was an example. But yeah,
right. So I guess I'm curious about like, would the conversation have even been there if we didn't have these people pushing for more extreme agendas? And do we lose some of that pull to like normalize these things and make them public conversation when you basically are just like, I think, a little eager to just write them off as too extreme? So you don't have to
let me
defend
be
them.
super clear, okay? Activists are really fucking important. And there should be people out there saying 15 an hour is slave labor and we need 25 an hour. Those people are important and they have an important role to play, but they need to understand the role, and we all need to understand the role, right? Because if people weren't pushing for, the most extreme shit, maybe we never have gay marriage, right? If people weren't pushing for the most extreme shit, maybe civil rights never happens in 64, right? That's possible. But but we have to understand that activists are activists and they agitate and they push us in a direction. Yep. But if you don't meet the activists, it's the same thing with like a moral ideal, right? If you don't hit like the moral ideal, it doesn't mean you're a horrible dog shit person. Like, it's the journey to that ideal that should be celebrated. And it's the same thing for activism. If we don't meet the activist demand, that's fine. We keep pushing that direction. But damn, you don't get canceled for not meeting the activist area,
Well, I guess I'm curious then. So, like, when Nina Turner, for example, because she's pushing like the $25 minimum wage thing, right? And I think it's like easy to laugh at her because obviously that feels a little insane, right? But I don't know how to deal with those people as somebody who has like a little bit more moderate policies. Like, I'm just not sure how to deal with those activists.
Nina Turner would have been a great congresswoman, and I think this really speaks to your point that there is a value in a Nina Turner being in the Democratic Party saying we really, really, really need to go in this direction. She lost because a billionaire pumped a lot of money into a PAC and flooded the television with anti-Nina Turner ads. Like, she cozied up to this one group and it was wildly effective, right? And I think very much at the detriment of the people in that district. So I really agree with you. I think something that I really admire about Nina Turner as I work that race is seeing what a brilliant person she is as a retail politician. Like, I urge you, go watch her hit on The Breakfast Club. She is talking to Charlemagne the God. It is the connection is wild, and she's pushing these issues and talking about what the Black community in Ohio faces. It is amazing. So I really agree with you. That has value. I think that even though there are things she said, they've been wildly divisive, and I think she would tell you they were a mistake. I think ultimately, like Destiny, you once said we can't think about people in percentages. I agree with you on that. I think the majority of the percentage of Nina Turner is someone who has been wildly successful at building a base of power and working with people in Ohio. So I think that has a lot of value. I think AOC is doing that as well.
Okay. Does that answer your question? And to also kind of illustrate it, right? Remember, we almost got universal basic health care, not universal basic health care, UBC income, UBI, sorry. Universal basic income. That was put on the floor, right, by Richard Nixon, of all people, right? Yep. But the left wouldn't vote for it because it wasn't enough. And so because we did not, take what we were given, we got nothing. And that's the thing that happens. Okay. Anything else, or else we're gonna go to weaponized discourse and close this out. Okay. Thanks for being here. Weaponized. What you got?
Yeah, my question's going to be directed at Brianna Wu, although obviously I would love everyone's take on it. I'm very interested in how much you're really emphasizing a grassroots shift, and particularly using media to direct people towards getting to the streets, canvassing. And I really appreciate that because I got my start canvassing. And the problem is I've reached this nihilistic phase, so maybe you can talk me down, where even once we did the impossible, which is we got a progressive candidate in office, even then they weren't enough. And often, while in office, pushing some of the policies that they had pledged to their own base that they were going to pursue actually got them canceled, made it really difficult for them to make alliances. And so to get quite specific too, one of the candidates locally, she had made a career for herself, suing the police, holding the police accountable. And she, before 2020, was elected on this sort of this pledge. But with the protests in 2020, there became a movement to try to defund the police for more than she felt was possible to win. And because she wasn't willing to ask for 50 million, she was only willing to push forward 15 million. She lost all of her supporter base. It was very publicly clear. And in many ways, it was obvious in that moment that she had already lost the mandate for re-election. And surprise, she lost re-election. And for the last 2 years of her candidacy, really, it was just pretty clear no one was going to cooperate with her. So what I want to know is, while I appreciate you pushing towards electoral, and de-emphasizing sort of online rhetoric, can you not see how the online rhetoric supports the electoral process once they're in office? And what's your sort of response to that?
I think it's extremely well said. We have a similar situation here in Massachusetts. Michelle Wu is our mayor of Boston, and Maura Healey is our governor, right? Is the tea fixed? No. We've got real work to do. I think you're exactly right. And I think, unfortunately, take it from someone who's a little older than you are, politics is about having your heart broken again and again and again and again. We have a hard job. There are no perfect politicians. And, I think that the ultimate answer is to raise the number of progressives that we have in positions of power. I think that's the way we do it. But I agree with your assessment that when they get into power, they're still dealing with this fundamentally, this reality of American politics that protects the status quo.
It protects the status quo, but I would push back. I would push back though. It protects the status quo, but she lost her mandate because she wasn't willing to go far enough, and because of this purity testing, right? Because people couldn't understand her doing what she needed to do as a politician, which is compromise. And because of this, she lost the mandate that she did have. And so one of the issues is, while I agree, I do agree. I think if more progressives were in office, they could build more coalitions with themselves, and they wouldn't have to necessarily compromise as much. So I agree that could be a solution. But one of my issues is one of the reasons why I've come to media and become interested in media programming is because running for office isn't enough. And it's clear that when there are politically activated activists who are focused on extreme rhetoric, they're not going to appreciate the work that we've done to get to the place of compromising, because they can't really conceive of how compromise benefits them.
Yeah, no, I think that's dead on. And I also think you're really correct about media being a key part of the problem here. Look at the Build Back Better bill, right? We're consistently going out there attacking progressives as though progressives are the ones standing in the way of Build Back Better. No, that's not true. We were the ones trying to get the bill to the president's desk that he wanted, his agenda that he campaigned on. It was Manchin and Sinema that were standing in the way. We had no way to get that out to normal people other than Young Turks and Majority Report, in my view. So I think it's really incumbent upon us to build alternative media structures to get these points of view out to the masses. Because Destiny's not here right now, but he got zero credit for Georgia that I've seen in the mainstream press, because no one's out there thinking about that story and writing about it. We really need our own alternative media ecosphere in the same way the right has.
I guess one of my things, and I don't want to, this is like classic, more lefty progressive moment, but it's almost like I want to suggest a new purity test. Like, I want to suggest that the people in these media environments have done that work, right? That they actually have gone out. Because one of the issues is that we do have people often talking about these issues of political compromise when they haven't actually hit the streets and they haven't actually realized the value of compromise. So it's very easy for them to speculate from their armchairs.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Okay.
Wait, can I respond to that real quick? Something about that?
Oh, yes.
Brianna brought up something really, really, really important. We know this from psychology. It is a fact. When you are socialized around other people, you cannot demonize them. It is impossible for somebody to be like, well, I won't say impossible, but like if you meet more people, you talk to more people, it's hard to be like racist or transphobic, because if you meet enough of these people, they're going to be human to you. The same exact thing works when it comes to political points of view. The reason why people online hate people that disagree with them politically so much is because if you've never met them, they genuinely seem like fucking barbarians, right? How can you be anti-abortion? How can you hate women so much? How can you want to enslave them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Like, it's the worst, most horrible fucking thing in the world, right? But if you actually meet pro-life people, and as much as they might be cringe, you talk to them and you realize, like, okay, you're religious, it's a human, you think babies are blah, 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 right? At the very least, you don't come away thinking that they're like these animals, these monsters, these savages that are just completely politically opposed to you. And compromising with them becomes possible because you understand them better. Nobody wants to compromise with a fucking monster. And when you never talk to other people that disagree with you politically, they are monsters. So the compromise is out of the question. That's why everybody is like so quick to like compare everybody to Nazis and fascists in the most evil way possible. It's because they have like no foundation of which they understand the other person's point of view.
Conflation crisis. That's what we have. Everything has to be the worst possible version of itself because that's what drives clicks and views. Okay, gang. This has been great. Oh, did you have something else, Weppy?
Oh, well, not really. I mean, I was interested though I agree completely with that sentiment. I'm not steel manning it for the sake of raising it, but rather that I've seen why people veer towards this demonization, and it's because it gets clicks, right? It gets people interested and it gets people mobilized about issues that they weren't otherwise. And so while I completely agree, it has upstream harms. One of the issues is it's also the entry point for a lot of people who otherwise didn't necessarily consider themselves political. Do you think that in the end, that end result is more harmful than it is worth it to engage? Or do you think maybe that could be the entry point for people and we could really emphasize that our thought leaders de-escalate people, right? De-radicalize.
Yeah, you can emphasize de-escalate people. This is something that is always going to be important to keep in mind. Politics is a reflection, and media is a reflection, ultimately, of what the people want to see. Now, there's a little bit of push and pull on both sides. A radical content creator can make people more radical, but if you've got a bunch of people who, if you socialize people around black people enough, and they go online, it's going to be kind of hard to get them to buy into, like, crazy race realist, like, neo-fascist, Christian nationalist, like, very racist type people. Because it's just not going to match your lived experience much, right? Or for me, like, I've talked to a lot of conservatives and shit. I'm never going to watch a program where there's some guy screaming about how, like, all conservatives are evil people that hate women and blah blah, because, like, I know them and it's just not going to affect me much. So I think it's important to understand that, like, while yeah, it can be annoying that some of these people online are so radical and push people in bad directions, which they do, a lot of the times because the people themselves are already very receptive to that message. I think that's important to keep in mind too. Yeah, people are too quick to blame the media when I think the media is oftentimes a reflection of the people that consume it. That's my feeling.
Yeah. Of what they want to consume.
I agree with that. I do think there are structural. I think the incentive structure with media in the United States is misaligned with outcomes that are desired for the people. I don't think there's anything malicious about it. I get frustrated when people attack journalists because I think it's an underpaid job generally. But I do think a lot of the times, just to be completely honest, I no longer watch cable news, right? I feel like I get more informed by listening to certain YouTube and Twitch channels, right? Because I feel like there's this bias towards sensationalism and conflict, and I think the real discussions that I find intellectual and stimulating, I think they're happening on Twitch and YouTube, in my view. So I really hear your point. I think it's a strong point. I think it's well said. I do think there's a misalignment that's not always in the public interest. I also do have to say, I would love to know, how do you kind of account for the fact that if you're saying media, we get the media we deserve, or we get the media that there's a market for, why is kind of the political sphere on Twitch so male dominated? Because there aren't a lot of women, in my view, that are, I mean, we certainly have some women figures, but it's very disproportionate in my view.
I think a lot of parts of the internet are pretty male dominated in general. And then I think Twitch's background probably informs that a lot too, right? Because Twitch came from gaming stuff, which was super heavily male dominated. And then it kind of, what we have now, I think, grew as an extension of that.
I agree with that. I also think Twitch values different women for different things. Like when I see Pokimane, I see her as...
That's another discussion.
No. I'm not making a joke here. I think Pokimane is brilliant politically. I think she is so good at getting people to form a connection with her audience. I think I just think the world of her, right? I wish there was a format for someone like Pokimane to talk about this stuff, because if she did, I think her audience would turn on her if she got a tenth as political as the average YouTube channel, even though she's clearly smart enough to do that kind of work. So
yeah, but the problem is these people are maximizing for a career, unfortunately, right?
Yeah,
there's just it would be fucking disaster for them to ever like even begin to talk politically. Yeah.
When you talk about relying more on like individual like journalists and like YouTubers and live streamers, do you think like you lose some of the accountability of like the more mainstream media channels where, I mean, on YouTube you could pretty much say like almost any radical idea you want, aside from like COVID misinformation. So do you think that might foster some of that like more radicalization?
Yeah, I don't like the shift towards, I mean, I am an alt media person. I don't like the shift towards alt media because I feel like the lack of accountability is really scary to me. Yeah, like you can get so, I don't know. Never mind. I was gonna mean, but yeah, I don't like that.
Well, what do you have thoughts on this, Brianna? If not, I have.
I'm just surprised to hear that. I mean, I think one of the reasons, like, I have no desire professionally to be a Twitch streamer for a living, but I think one of the reasons I've chosen to spend more time in doing stuff like this is it's very clear to me this is where the culture is set for younger people. I feel very strongly that that's the case. So I agree with you. There's not this standard of fact checking, and there's not an editor kind of looking at stuff, and I think that is I think we clearly see the outcome of that. But I think it's important, and I think that it's powerful. I think there are issues that get talked about on Twitch that would never get covered on corporate media, in my view.
The decentral. Oh, sorry.
No, I agree 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the decentralization of the media, of the information, right, has happened because people. Well, first of all, more people have access to a camera and the ability to be broadcast and the ability to gain an audience. And also because legacy media, right, has lost the trust of the American people, right? It just has. Trust in media organizations is at an all-time low because they've gotten it wrong so much, right? And they've been unable to hold the trust. Now, there are some bad actors who are pushing that too, right? That who are using those mistakes that have been made to really kind of ram that home. But I guess I disagree with Destiny here. I think that the decentralization of information is largely a good thing. The problem with having a single or just a few institutions with such immense amounts of institutional power to have accountability and choose what is truth and what is not, that has problems of its own. So I guess it's just half a dozen of one, six of the other. That's all.
But I think that kind of echoes what Destiny was saying, where like people are just finding content that's sort of what they already believe is true, and they're just geting it reaffirmed. I don't think people are going to like.
But that happens with legacy media too. That was not different during legacy media days. That was not substantively different. Even back, when in the newspaper days, there were hundreds of newspapers that you could tailor to what you wanted to read, right? And there were the socialist rags that were being printed by not fit for to use as toilet paper, right? It's a human thing. I don't think it's a necessarily a reflection of technology. But I've talked enough. I've ranted enough. I've kept you all enough.
Can I make one more point on that? I don't agree with that. And there's a phrase I hear people using increasingly, anti-fans. I love Destiny. That's why I watch your show in the first place. I enjoy hearing arguments from people I disagree with. And I think there are a lot of people out there that are like me. So I think that any streamer would probably tell you there are a lot of people that watch their content that don't like them, right? True. So I don't think it necessarily segments us into bubbles, right? I think that sometimes we click on things. Yeah, I can tell you over time, like listening to different points of view, it certainly changed the way I've approached things and thought about things. So I don't inherently agree it's always a bubble. I think there's a bit of mix over in my view.
Maybe. That's another conversation entirely. I will say that thank you for being here. Thank you all for coming. I'm not sure how YouTube works where I can send people off. I don't know the commands yet, so I'm just going to end the stream. Gang, if you liked what you heard today, and if you'd like to hear more, we do this on Twitch all the time at twitch.tv/WhickTV. We also do it right here at youtube.com/@Wick-TV. Come check us out. It's great. Thanks for being here, gang. And hopefully I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.
See you later.
Thanks, Wick.
Okay, we're done. Thanks again for coming.
Thanks so much.
Okay, I'm gonna go eat, and I gotta pee right now.
Have fun, buddy.
For sure.
Thanks a lot, y'all.
See you later.
Yeah, see you guys later. Bye.
Thanks for popping by.